Fresh off a superb 2009, Randy Orton's 2010 was destined to continue his ongoing momentum as the Viper. He had developed into the coolest character in WWE, and Orton's intentions were clear. He wanted titles, but getting to that point brought him to cruel measures. Orton's dastardly actions left a black mark on just about everybody he touched. Triple H, his family was tortured and disgraced, but in the end, he failed to stop the momentum of the Viper. John Cena, he may have come out of it all proud, but getting to that point was hell. His father was kicked into oblivion, he was taken out and had to recover for 3 months and was constantly screwed over. Now, that Iron Man match, in my opinion, was a pretty good way of wrapping things up. It was one of the very first of its kind. It was chaotic as hell. One thing I loved was the psychology and storytelling. Like in the beginning, Randy knew that STF was going to wear him down, and so he tapped. Sure, he conceded a point, but he still had his energy. The points slowly added up, and Legacy at one point interfered. There was attempted murder, a Kofi Kingston interference, an announce table spot, and the final quarter of the match was superb. That's when it got really interesting. John Cena was looking like he was heading to Friday nights, if you were 8, because this is Super Cena. There was no way he was going to go to SmackDown at the peak of his career. Can a person dream? And tell me this guy wasn't the best character of 2009. He was looking like the perfect lunatic. Like, look at this man. He was just doing so well at this point from the character standpoint. Orton ended up making the mistake of missing the punt and found himself in the STF. The crowd exploded, they were going insane, and Orton was desperate to hold on. He was hell-bent, but with 5 seconds, he tapped, and John Cena was the new WWE champion. Awesome match, although there was some forgettable moments. Also, on the topic of John Cena losing, it was never going to happen. Like, the thought of seeing Orange John Cena at SmackDown seems pretty unimaginable. And I'm not going to say it wasn't interesting, it's just very unlikely. But if he were to move to SmackDown, that would have been cool. You know, we could have seen him face CM Punk, The Undertaker, Rey Mysterio perhaps, but he was never going to move to SmackDown at all. And that's a damn shame. Like, I always wanted to see him on SmackDown, you know, competing on Friday nights and all that, but it just never happened. Now, what the results of this match also meant was that Randy Orton couldn't receive his rematch clause because John Cena was champion. So he let out his frustrations on Kofi Kingston. This was after Kingston beat Chris Jericho clean in the middle of the ring. Orton was absolutely incensed, demented, all types of evil words, and when asked to explain things, he talked about how Kingston cost him a title. It was justice in his eyes. Rhodes and DiBiase wanted to calm the ex-champion down by gifting him with a special NASCAR vehicle. And it was a way of clearing things, you know. DiBiase and Rhodes had their issues with Orton recently. They were also eager to do something about John Cena and challenged him to a matchup. The champ didn't want anything to do with them, stating something along the lines of, oh, people are going to think Raw's having reruns. You know, it's repetitive, and I honestly find that ironic because we see a lot of rematches recently. He said that Orton can't get the title shot, but those two, they got to work for it. Cena's statements were proven right. Those two don't deserve it because they ended up losing to MVP and Mark Henry. To make matters worse, Randy Orton noticed this, and luckily for them, he wasn't focused on the loss, rather the WWE Championship. The Viper was extremely frustrated with how things went and tried ignoring the stipulation, saying he'll do whatever it takes to get back the title. Suddenly, Kofi Johnson popped up on the screen and said that nobody cares about what Orton says. The man was over the edge. He was raging while Kofi calmly explained where he was. He was shouting all kinds of threats to Kingston, and all he could do was talk about how durable his NASCAR vehicles were. Yeah, he really didn't care about how angry Randy Orton was. Kingston's trying to demonstrate stuff, all while Orton's raging like he lost a match in Modern Warfare 2 or something. His car was being scratched by keys, and to make matters worse, Kofi was sarcastically killing a bug on the hood of the vehicle. To top it all off, Kofi poured a bucket of paint and said that Orton's never looked better. And I love this promo. It was supposed to be the beginning of a beautiful run for Kofi Kingston, and never before had he shown that much intensity and skill in this promo. Like only a month earlier, Kofi was the laid-back Jamaican who never really seemed all that violent or intense. It was a good start. Because of the chaos and hatred between those two, the match was made for Raw the following week. Heading into the match, Kofi felt remorseless. You know, he wasn't going to be bullied and said that Orton should look in the mirror and learn why he's no longer champion. Now about this match, it went south quickly with interferences, and so it turned into a 6-man. Babyfaces won it, but Orton for the most part remained unscathed. Kofi did get his shot in though. Shortly afterwards, a 10-man Survivor Series elimination match was confirmed for the pay-per-view, and ahead of the match, MVP and Mark Henry invited Kofi to the VIP lounge. He told both Mark and MVP that it wouldn't be possible to not include him in the team, and even called MVP Mr. 305. But anyways, they were showering him with praises. Felt like that moment where he destroyed the car was huge. I personally believe that as well. Then Legacy interrupted the celebration. The security stared at Hull at them before suddenly thinking that they're cool enough to enter. Randy straight up called them street thugs. Talked about how Mark stole a victory from him, MVP being the definition of a common criminal, and mentioned how Kofi destroyed his car. Rhodes said the MVP did look VIP, but his buddies certainly weren't. Ted undermined the VIP lounge's setup and talked about how his bank account pales in comparison to his daddy's. Orton said they belong in the hood from where they came from. What the hell? And so Kofi slapped him. This led to a Henry Orton match. Not much really happened here, but Randy wins it, and afterwards Kofi sends him running. That's another promo that some people feel is kind of controversial. You know, he's like, oh, you guys are from the hood or something along the lines of that. A lot of people did not like that at the time. Nonetheless, Kofi was still looking tough in the lead up to Survivor Series. Orton was actually running from him, and the following week proved to be an extremely memorable moment for Kingston in his career. So Orton was ready to punt Roddy Piper. Kofi runs in for the save and Orton sprints. As he's walking to the back, Kingston brings the fight to him. They brawl inside the crowd. Orton takes control and slows down the pace. Things seemed bleak for Kofi as he found no answer to Orton's brutality, but he avoids the punt. He leads Orton back into the crowd. It was looking like the brawl was over, but Kofi, though, was still intense. He refused to let go, and he ended up hitting the boom drop from the top of the stairs. The fans went crazy, cheering and applauding Kofi's actions, and surely this was a monumental moment in his career. There's no denying that. When you have a moment like this in MSG, you're basically a made man. And at the end of the day, like when we look at Kofi Kingston's top 10 moments in his career, this is surely in there. This has to be in the top 10, maybe even the top 5, right? Now, about the match at Survivor Series, I love it. Other than the fact that Matt Striker called Mark Henry the chef of Hell's Kitchen, nothing bad about this one. I talked about it here. There's a video if you want a detailed explanation as to what happened. But long story short, Kofi looked great out there. Ended up being the only person facing off against two men who at the time held a total of 12 world championships, I believe. To make matters worse, CM Punk had him scouted because they had been a team not too long ago. He was being worn down, taken and beating, all while Randy Orton was slowly regaining his energy. The crowd was 100% on Kofi's side, and they believed in the gutsy underdog. He caught Punk 1, 2, 3, and as Orton entered, boom! He took the trouble in paradise. Within 10 seconds, he beat two of the best from 2009. Guys who, in my opinion, were top 5 that year, and look at the fans. They were so joyous, they were so excited to see what had unfolded. Everything that WWE was doing with Kofi Kingston at the time was like Kurt Hennig. It was perfect. It was all going very well in the way it should be, and when you look at it from that time period, like, hey, this guy might reach the very top, right? It's looking like there's a chance there because he beat 2 world champions. The previous champion was Randy Orton. On SmackDown, the previous champion was CM Punk, so it's a huge deal. The next night on Raw, a very calm and composed Randy Orton came out despite the guest host's entrance. The guest host, by the way, was Jesse Ventura. This was his first appearance in WWE since 1999. He wasn't always on the best terms with WWE, but they managed to have him appear here. The reason why Randy Orton interrupted was because he wanted a WWE title shot. According to him, the guest host can do anything they want. The man seemed extremely possessed, like the title was the only thing that was keeping him sane. The body did come out and turn back the clock, and he said that he respects Orton in his style, saying that he reminds him of himself. He wanted to bring something new, and the problem with this new thing was the fact that Randy Orton wasn't going to get a title shot. Because Ventura was fed up with the same guys getting title shots. He's like, oh, nobody who was an ex-champion, including you, will get a title shot. So he booked a breakthrough battle royal. In order to qualify for the battle royal, you gotta win a singles match. Randy told him that he's making a very big mistake, but the body didn't care. He's like, mistakes happen often. Now, this episode, for good or for bad, was pretty damn unique. We got to see some never-before-seen matches, such as John Cena versus CM Punk. But on the topic of Randy Orton, he felt that he was a victim of a conspiracy. He was being forced to sign a contract, barring him from challenging the title. Obviously, he didn't complain about this the previous month when he was champ, because that's a whole different story. Ventura, though, didn't want to deviate from what he believed. Legacy, meanwhile, punched their ticket to the main event while Randy Orton was still thinking of a way. Out of everyone that he attacked, he chose poor Primo. The ref didn't want to do this. He refused to ring the bell, but Ventura intervened. It seemed like he was canceling this, but he respected Randy's persistence in getting the title shot. The body told him that rules are meant to be broken, and he revealed that if he beats Evan Bourne, then Randy Orton is entered in the main event. Bourne, as expected, took an ass kick. I mean, Randy's essentially his kryptonite, and Orton confirmed his spot in the Battle Royal. Also, a little side mention, I remember being absolutely shocked that Ventura mentioned WWF. It was so unbelievable at the time, but anyways, the premise of this Battle Royal was kind of cool in my opinion. It gives a bunch an opportunity to challenge for the title and have a program with the top guy. It's something I want to see happen more often, and every once in a while, it'd be cool. Legacy on paper had a very huge advantage. Their strategy was simple: divide and conquer. Orton didn't really do much, rather stand on the outside and observe the action. It took a while for him to re-enter, and Legacy was doing the hard work. But the duo was thrown out. Orton was once again haunted by Kofi Kingston, and he couldn't believe what had transpired. The crowd was extremely lively for this, but ended up being silenced when Sheamus won it. This was back when he was relatively unknown. I also think nobody thought he had a chance to win the Battle Royal, let alone beat Orange John Cena. Back to Orton. He would get his rematch with Kofi on the November 30th, 2009 episode. For Kingston, it was over before it began. Why? Because Cody attacked, and to make matters worse, DiBiase followed up with an onslaught towards the knee. And the way Randy Orton came out, you'd think dinner was ready. Despite this, Kofi was eager to have the match, even though he was wounded. For Orton, he was mostly on cruise control. Kingston had this moment, but all Orton had to do was respond with an RKO. Nonetheless, this was far from over. Orton, on the other hand, believed the contrary. He was really eager to get back in the WWE Championship picture, and the whole stipulation was bugging him greatly. Orton demanded that Mark Cuban reverse that decision, and Legacy even showed the flashback to Survivor Series 2003, and how Cuban took an RKO. He refused to grant Orton his request, and instead booked him in a match with Kofi Kingston for tonight. Since WWE refs are worse than the NBA refs, that's the truest fact I've heard today, he's going to be the referee. Cody says this thing Kenny and Martin and his mother. He told Cuban that they're all talk. On the topic of Orton Kingston, Cuban couldn't let 2003 go apparently and screwed him over hard by doing a fast count. Randy had that look on his face, you know the one, and Cuban announced that they should face off in a rubber match at TLC. About that match, not bad at all. Legacy tried instilling fear into Kofi's mind, but all he could do was bury those two and straight up walk into Orton's locker room and call him a coward. He said that he's looking forward to beating him down. In this segment itself, it's pretty unique. It showed the bravery that Kofi's got, and it was something different for once. Pretty cool. Kofi did put in a good performance and showed that there was a future on top for him, and at one point even hit the Trouble in Paradise, but Orton touched the rope. Ultimately though, Orton punted his arm. He tried blocking the punt, to the face, and slithered around like a snake. Kofi went for his best shot, but Orton had cat-like reflexes and ducked before hitting the RKO. Good match. Kofi looked pretty damn tough this time around. It wasn't no slouch, and it wasn't like he was buried or anything like that, because this feud was looking like it was going to continue from here on. On the other side of things, there was some good news for Orton. The WWE title picture was unlocked with John Cena losing. With that said, there were some issues within Legacy. Randy Orton felt that he had wasted a year and a half of his life with Rhodes and DiBiase. Why? Because they lost a 6-man tag to a trio that had never teamed up before. Orton didn't see why Legacy continued because he's not a WWE champion, and those two weren't tag team champions. The duo though didn't see things that way. Matter of fact, they wanted Orton to say things for being bailed out a bunch of times. Suddenly though, he gave both men an ultimatum. Win your match or get kicked out of Legacy. DiBiase won his match, Rhodes followed up, and it seemed like Orton gained back the respect for his proteges. Later that night, he interfered in Kofi's title match and caused the DQ before hitting the RKO. Now why did you do this? Well, Orton believed that their issues had yet to be resolved. The next week, they certainly will. At the same time, Orton was trying to make moves. He asked Vince if he needs help in attacking Bret Hart, and in return receiving the number 30 spot in the Royal Rumble, but his request was denied in a huge way. Legacy, meanwhile, had grown a big head. They're telling Orton that he better beat Kofi because if he doesn't, then he's out of Legacy. But one thing to know is that the crowd cheered this revelation. Nonetheless, Kingston took the L once more, so I guess regardless of the whole stupid thing, he was going to be pushed? I'm not sure. Well, Randy Orton, of course, focused on getting himself a title shot. He noticed that Sheamus didn't have a challenger and asked Mike Tyson to insert him into the match. John Cena and Kofi Kingston also laid claim to the shot, and so a triple threat match was made. Winner faces Sheamus. Meanwhile, there's still some tension within Legacy. Those two argued over the Royal Rumble, claiming they're winning it before throwing digs at each other. Rhodes said that his 5th grade graduation video was superior to the Marine, and Randy Orton, on the other hand, was too busy calling Kofi Kingston a stupid person. Why? Because, well, you guys know this. He made the big mistake of not taking the punt, and Orton certainly let him know. Oh, and Legacy aided him in victory, so the tension between them disappeared for like the 3rd, 4th, or 5th time. One thing to note around this time period is the fact that Randy Orton was slowly transitioning into a tweener. He was getting a lot of cheers towards the end of 2009 and early 2010, even more so heading into the Royal Rumble. He paid a visit to Sheamus' match this week, and so the champion returned the favor. This time, unlike Randy, Sheamus caught him with the bro kick. As for Legacy, the group itself had a huge issue within. Things weren't working, so Orton told him to get things straight. He was talking about winning the title, and that was the only thing he was focused on. Wasn't helping though that Legacy was still having problems. On the day of the Royal Rumble, Cody was telling Orton that Ted had had a big head after his movie was released. He even told him that Ted was talking about winning the Rumble and beating Orton himself for the title at WrestleMania. And right before his match began, Ted wished Randy good luck before saying the exact same thing but twisting it around, saying Sheamus was going to be the opponent. Because of this, for the first time in a very long time, he didn't want neither man's help. The match itself, on the other hand, it wasn't bad or anything like that, but it fails to stand out. Rather, the post-match is much more memorable than the action itself. Sheamus isolated Orton's arm for most of the match, and it seemed like he figured things out, but Orton, who as expected was working as the babyface, started to gain momentum. Then Cody Rhodes randomly came in and assaulted Sheamus. This was at the most inopportune time because Randy Orton had finally hit the RKO. Orton's got a deflated look on his face before staring a hole at Cody. The fans were loudly chanting RKO, RKO, and they were ready for that face turn. Cody was continuously apologizing, but Randy didn't care and attacked. He's shouting at him, "You screwed it all!" Placed the blame on him, but Peacekeeper DiBiase came in. He takes a strike. Orton's telling Rhodes that he's done, but once he turns around, boom. Bro kick. So when you look at the story itself, it's pretty odd to see that Randy Orton was the one who was turning face. Like, weren't Ted and Cody pegged for the turn itself? I'm not sure. I think it's because the crowd reacted way more to Randy Orton. The next night on Raw, DiBiase seemed extremely regretful over last night, but Randy didn't seem to accept the apology. Nonetheless, Legacy was still a group. At the same time, Ted and Orton qualified for Elimination Chamber. And Cody was kind of jello of Ted's participation, mentioning how he had to face John Cena whereas Ted faced Mark Henry. They got into a small argument over who's better before Orton came in. He shut things down quickly, asking DiBiase if he thinks he's better than him. And why was he saying this? Well, because Ted was bragging about how he's better than Cody. He also said that Cody's intentions were good at the Rumble, but tonight, he's facing him. Because Sheamus was on a quest to soften the competition, Cody Rhodes took advantage of this distraction and beat Randy Orton. Wow, things were moving at a very fast pace at this point. Rhodes once again the following week accidentally sabotaged Randy Orton's match with Sheamus, and at this point he was like, screw it. DiBiase was holding him responsible, pointing the finger at him, and Orton decides to RKO Cody. Sheamus kicks Ted before walking into an RKO himself, and I remember this. I shamelessly hopped on the Randy Orton bandwagon because I knew he was turning face. He was getting a positive reaction every single week, and it was getting louder and louder and louder, and I guess they decided why not. Now the topic of Elimination Chamber, this is when it gets real interesting. So Randy Orton was in there inflicting damage, shining bright. Ted then enters and they form an alliance. The duo worked as a unit, causing chaos and shutting down the opposition. At one point, Orton even saved DiBiase from getting eliminated, and as he's measuring Cena for the RKO, Rhodes comes in with a lead pipe. He tosses it to DiBiase, he blasts Randy Orton. Yep, he turned on his mentor and eliminated him. Once Orton realized what's up, it was too late, and funny enough, for all those efforts those two were making, Ted DiBiase was eliminated a minute later. All for nothing. Now to Cody Rhodes, this was his opportunity to show that he was right. He claimed that DiBiase was proclaiming how he was going to eliminate Orton and win the title, but the Viper assured him that if there's anyone who's responsible, it's himself. Why? Because he wasn't the leader that he was. Whenever he didn't get his way, he would bully Rhodes and DiBiase, and that's why he asked for a 6-man tag team match tonight. Yep, he was going to team up with Ted, and hell, Orton even told Cody to tell Ted that he's sorry. Now, one thing to mention is that the Young Guns had something up their sleeve. Cody had felt that this whole thing went a little too well, and the suspicions were proven to be true. Despite the plan set in motion, Randy dismantled Legacy before they even attempted it, and so there's the face turn. My kayfabe thoughts are, Orton was well aware of Legacy's plans. He wasn't stupid and turned on them. Before they can even go with the plan, the duo were starting to get greedy and a little too ambitious. And on the other side of things, it's funny to think that the man who was essentially the WWE's devil 6 months ago was now a babyface. Last time Orton was a good guy was 2005. But with that said, DiBiase and Orton did face off the following week, but Cody caused the DQ and Legacy attacked. Orton tried fighting back and actually succeeded in neutralizing the young duo, so this led to a handicap match in the March 8, 2010 episode of Raw. Right when the match began, Randy Orton attacked in order to gain a head start. He knew that his former proteges were intelligent and well-knowledged about the squared circle. He tried his best but ultimately fell short. That wasn't it though, as Cody hit Crossroads. They added insult to injury, mocking him with a pose, and shortly afterwards the match was confirmed for WrestleMania. It was going to be Cody Rhodes versus Ted DiBiase versus Randy Orton. Legacy triple threat match. On the challenge itself, he straight up said that he didn't take them seriously. Orton also claimed that at WrestleMania they're going to find out that without him, they're absolutely nothing. Rhodes and DiBiase once again interfered in Orton's business, ruining his match with Triple H. Just as the game was going to make the save, Sheamus broke-kicked him. This led to a tag match between all 5 men on the final Raw before WrestleMania. Triple H threatened Orton, telling him that if he tries, he'll drop him. Before the match could even begin, Rhodes and DiBiase gave their final thoughts. They said that it was 18 months of temper tantrums, all kinds of things, and Rhodes felt that Orton did nothing with them. They were going to be stars regardless of Randy, and hell, he claimed that it was Orton who needed them the most. Ted said that neither of them care who wins the match at WrestleMania, as long as Orton loses. Both men took extremely slight jabs at each other. Oh, I'm 3 years younger than Ted. Oh, Cody wasn't born into a life of luxury, before Rhodes proclaimed himself to be the winner. Now, with regards to the match itself, the crowd was raucous for Randy Orton. He was getting explosive reactions, and it showed that from a reaction standpoint, turning him wasn't a bad decision. He, of course, didn't win it because of the numbers advantage. And about WrestleMania 26, I don't think anybody thought Legacy had a chance. No way. Orton was on fire. He had so much momentum and was far and away the better guy. Just didn't feel like a huge match. It was Randy Orton, the certified main eventer, the 5-time world champion or something along the lines of that, against 2 mid-carders. Also, I said before how it's odd that Orton was the one who turned babyface. But anyways, the match was just there. For as long as Legacy existed as a faction, this did not feel spectacular. Early on, DiBiase and Rhodes worked as a unit to keep Orton grounded. They started getting greedy and Legacy imploded. This was a huge error because Randy Orton was left alone and he burst out. There was a little moment where they stopped him, but it never led to much, and Randy Orton with the entire crowd support DDT'd them and punted Cody, all while Teddy was in shock. He tried neutralizing Orton but was pushed away and took the RKO. Fans exploded and Orton's victorious. Decent match, but if you thought there was going to be some huge drama given the circumstances, you had another thing coming. Goes to show just how much Rhodes and DiBiase progressed in that time. Like from the beginning of Legacy all the way to the end, their star power did not really increase that much. And sure, they had some experience under their belt, but they weren't bigger stars afterwards. On the March 29th, 2010 episode of Raw, Randy Orton was set to team up with a new champion, John Cena, to face Jack Swagger and Batista. Cena chose him as the mystery partner, and Batista was on the verge of throwing a fit. Orton's momentum drove the team to victory, and he seemed primed for a huge push, especially because nobody knew where WWE was heading post-WrestleMania with the Triple H and Shawn Michaels leaving. At the time, Jack Swagger cashed in Money in the Bank to win the World Heavyweight Championship, which meant he was now an official member of SmackDown. He gave his farewell on Raw the following week, claiming he left because nobody could beat him, but John Cena wanted to put that claim to the test. When Randy Orton heard this, he was more than eager to have the match. Then Show Miz interrupted David Otunga, who was running Raw with a one-day haircut, made the All-American go one-on-one with the Apex Predator. They have the match, and it doesn't end so well for the new champion, who fell short, and with this, he unknowingly put Orton's name in the hat for a title shot, despite this being a SmackDown title. Out of everyone to confirm the match, it was David Hasselhoff, 2010 WWE. The match was Extreme Rules, and Randy Orton saw it as his opening. The stipulation plays into his favor, and he even said that the Money in the Bank was the worst case scenario for Jack Swagger, because he has to face him now. Later that night, he almost beat his Evolution brother when the champion interfered and dropped him with a gut-wrench powerbomb, and Swagger was looking good. So far, he was looking strong as champion, but that's a different story. After the volcano eruption in Iceland, the Raw roster was left stranded in Europe, so all you saw from Orton was him saying this and that about Swagger at Extreme Rules. It's not worth mentioning, otherwise I would have talked about it right now. There was not much of a build for the match. It was more about Jack Swagger's story than Randy Orton's. He was the guy who had a lot to lose and was the fresh new face. The match itself, though, was very solid, but when you watch it, it's clear why nobody talks about it. There's just not much to say, it's inoffensive. Last time I visited this match was in this video. Swagger managed to retain. It's technically clean, but Orton had the last laugh with the RKO, which meant the feud was over. It was literally a 1 month feud to get Jack Swagger off of Raw and onto SmackDown and move on to other things. So where did Randy Orton go from here? The WWE title. The next night on Raw, Randy Orton and Sheamus laid their claims to the WWE Championship. This got them a triple threat match, which was heading towards an Orton victory, when from out of nowhere, Edge interfered and dropped the Apex Predator, costing him the title. This was the start of his heel turn, which was odd because only 3 months earlier, he returned as a face and was being cheered. With that said, Edge refused to give the fans an explanation initially. He wanted to bring back Rated R in this PG era, and his guest for the Cutting Edge the following week was Randy Orton. At least initially, because Wayne Brady came out and Edge made him the guest host. He wanted to feel like a wrestler, and Randy Orton was like, say no more. Orton had a disturbed, menacing look on his face, and Brady was clearly unaware of what he was dealing with. He wanted to greet him, and boom, RKO. Orton's eyes were dead set on Edge, who was quite hesitant with his movement, and he told him that last week was a wrong case of wrong person at the wrong time. And he made mention of the last time Orton appeared on the Cutting Edge, teasing a Rated RKO reunion. His verbal language here was very similar to last time, giving him an idea of where this partnership could go. After no answer, Edge said that spearing him is a good thing and expressed disappointment and anger with the fans refusing to accept him. Even though he did right, he was doing all the right things, they didn't care, yet Randy Orton, a selfish person, has the entire crowd by his side. He complained about everything being unfair to him and told Orton to listen. He told him, "You will join me," and promised that if he doesn't, that spear from last week was only the tip of the iceberg. Edge was losing his mind over the lack of words from Orton, and he wanted to go for the RKO. Nope. But neither was a spear because Orton bounced back. Very good segment here. Edge finally explained deeply why he played the fans. He wanted their love and admiration, but felt that they weren't reciprocating enough. Good stuff. Orton finally addressed his actions, saying he believes Edge saw him as a threat, and teaming up with him was a way of keeping Orton in control. All of a sudden, Meatloaf interrupted. 2010 WWE, guys. He was talking the talk and got RKO'd for it. It's so hilarious how the tone went from dark and serious with Orton discussing Edge's evil plans, and we have this. The Rated R Superstar, though, came out after this and mentioned Orton's history of assaulting guest hosts and said that there needs to be a permanent GM here. He was, of course, referring to Vicky Guerrero. And the fans were booing hard. She had more heat than a frying pan. She promised to reprimand him, and Orton was like, "Why don't you come down and reprimand me right now?" Edge quickly got involved before Vicky revealed that the Apex Predator will face Edge and a mystery partner. That turned out to be Ted DiBiase, and the expectation Edge and Vicky had for this one was not met, because Orton won the handicap match, and to make matters worse, he RKO'd Edge afterwards. With Over the Limit on the horizon, both men received the opportunity to choose the other's opponent. Randy Orton chose Christian and left Edge feeling annoyed, and the Rated R Superstar had to fight like hell to get the victory, but even then, it was only the beginning. Randy Orton expressed confusion over Edge's match, saying he didn't choose Christian. and when Edge heard the gong, he knew he was finished. So he purposefully lost, and even then took a chokeslam. And Randy Orton, meanwhile, had to go one-on-one with the World Heavyweight Champion, Jack Swagger. This was also when he looked naked with the lack of wrist tape, but that's not the point. For this one, Edge interfered and dropped the Apex Predator with a spear, signaling what's to come over the limit. Unfortunately, this match was cursed. It was very disappointing, and to top it all off, Randy Orton suffered a shoulder injury, so they had to pivot the finish to a double countout. Orton's injury looked really bad initially, but it was all good for Raw the next night. He was announced for the Fatal 4-Way title match at the namesake pay-per-view, and the shoulder injury was used as a storyline from here on. Edge and Orton were set to face off in a tag team main event, and Edge decided, you know what, I'm gonna go after that arm. He did just that, and John Cena had to find a replacement. The Viper was still selling the injury on TV and even had a match with his arm in a sling against Edge. It was a one arm tied behind your back situation, but Edge ended up getting himself DQ'd. They brawl, Edge brings in a chair and inflicts even more damage to the already injured shoulder. The Viper's status was not in any way doubtful, and he had his issues, but promised to wrestle in the main event in that Fatal 4-Way. He did just that over here, but the main event was marred in controversy involving the Nexus and Bret Hart. But as for Fatal 4-Way, good match. The story was about Nexus and John Cena more so than Randy Orton and the others. Sheamus managed to steal it in the end, but it wasn't all about him. As I said, it was about the Nexus destroying the other guys. Edge and Orton's feud, though, was far from over. Miz got involved as well the next night on Raw, and Edge used this to his advantage, spearing the Viper. He then grabbed the mic and said that the real fun begins now. Was he lying? Damn right. You see, the Money in the Bank was coming up, and that meant the briefcase was prioritized over the feud. The build was basic multi-man stuff. Orton lifted the briefcase at one point, but there was something memorable to come from this build-up. It was the whole Evan Bourne thing. You see, after a tag team match, Randy Orton decided to RKO his tag team partner, Evan Bourne, showing that he's still untrustworthy despite his slight change of character. This leads me to the next event. Edge and Orton finally had the rematch here. It was a bit better than Over the Limit, but that's not saying much. As time went on, it picked up and the fans were fully behind it, but since this was 2010 WWE, Chris Jericho interfered and Edge went for the Edge-O-Matic to win it. Surprising, because Edge usually didn't win with the move at the time, but whatever. Jericho then hits the code breaker before walking into the RKO. Evan Bourne suddenly runs in and drops the Viper with a kick before going up to the top rope, and it seemed a bit far, but he didn't care. And Orton's like, hold my beer, and connects with an amazing mid-air RKO in the crowd. Michael Cole, everyone was going crazy, and it's still talked about to this very day because of how ridiculous, how impeccable Randy Orton's timing was to catch Evan Bourne with a shooting star. It was just out of this world. It looked so out of place in 2010 WWE. Money in the Bank proved to be unsuccessful for Randy Orton. He had quite the performance but fell short to The Miz, who stole it from right underneath him. But it wasn't all bad for him, because from here on, it was only up. He won the #1 Contenders Triple Threat match to earn an opportunity to face Sheamus for the title at SummerSlam. He was by far the most liked wrestler, probably the most popular on the entire roster. His intentions were unpredictable, and you always felt like he was up to something. Sheamus got to witness the Apex Predator firsthand, and when trying to take advantage of this, took an RKO. So The Miz was ready to cash in. He comes in with the briefcase, about to win a title, and boom, RKO. Crowd goes insane as always, and all they needed to do now is give him the title, because Orton was ready for it. His face run was a success up to this point. Sheamus promised to retaliate, saying he's leaving Orton the same way he left Triple H, but the Viper wasn't worried, saying Sheamus should focus on watching his match with The Miz. He promised to beat him so badly that he'll be in no shape to cash in the briefcase. The champion did watch the match from a distance and didn't budge from his place after seeing Orton make work of The Miz. The word around was that Sheamus was scared, and he confirmed these rumors, saying he was scared. Scared of what he's gonna do to Orton himself. He said that if anyone thinks he's taking the title, you better think otherwise, and showed a clip of himself. Sheamus showed zero fear and even called out Randy Orton to tell him face to face. The Viper here did not hesitate. He called him a liar for his claims and said that he had the opportunity to prove that he should be taken serious. And he's like, everybody takes me serious, fella. For Orton, it was a blown opportunity. In his eyes, he thought Sheamus blew it here. He's going to do the very same thing at SummerSlam when he loses the title. He also made sure to mention that Sheamus never beat him, and he denied this claim, saying John Cena and Triple H looked him in the eye. He said that just like Cena, he goes to the back of the line. Orton was very certain of his chances at SummerSlam, and acknowledged that if Sheamus wants to redeem himself, then do it now. And there's the notification. Michael Cole revealed that if somebody interferes in the title match at SummerSlam, they'll be suspended indefinitely. And he said that Orton will get no rematch if he loses. He also encouraged Sheamus to do something. He didn't, and Orton took advantage. Nonetheless, Sheamus fought back, only to fall in the same position that many had for years. And because of Orton's hesitancy and yearning of championship gold, he didn't do it. The match at SummerSlam was pretty forgettable. It does not stand out, barring two things on this show. The event itself is disappointing. That doesn't mean the match is bad, because it was far from that, but it just doesn't stand out. Orton displayed such a high level of resiliency that he left Sheamus speechless. Everything he would throw at him, he would kick out. And even when he connected with a brogue kick, it still wasn't enough. So Sheamus brought in a chair. He pushed the ref and got DQ'd, realizing, hey, I retained the title. He tried to attack afterwards, but the fury of Randy Orton was far too much and he RKO'd him on the announce table. Orton was driven by his hatred of Sheamus and championship gold, so whoever crossed his path would endure the brunt of it. He made Justin Gabriel look like a jobber the next time before Sheamus ran in. So he focused on the champion and brawled in the crowd. And once he realized he lost by countout, he dropped Gabriel with an RKO before taking out Sheamus, signaling his intentions. So in an effort to combat this almost unstoppable momentum, Sheamus complained about him, saying he doesn't deserve a title shot. He even wanted Orton locked up for his actions. The anonymous Raw GM saw things in the same way as Sheamus and wanted to treat him like a champion. So he brought out a throne and told him that he could choose any opponent. Of course, Randy Orton won his match, but that was absolutely irrelevant to the champion. His decision was based on complacency. It was a storyline, a shrewd idea, very intelligent. For one, he wanted the match tonight instead of Night of Champions and gave the title match to Zack Ryder. He came out appreciating the opportunity but said that Sheamus made the biggest mistake of his life. That promo ended up being longer than the match and it was like 8 seconds. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Sheamus was all happy, saying he could take the night off at the pay-per-view because of WWE's rules and regulations. But Wade Barrett wasn't interested in any of this nonsense and invoked his title shot, which he received from winning NXT. Barrett's request was accepted, but the match was a 6-pack challenge. Chris Jericho, Randy Orton, Edge, and John Cena. They locked their eyes on him before Sheamus shoved Barrett and gave him a taste of his own medicine. Jericho with the code breaker, Edge with the spear, Cena with the AA, and Orton with the RKO. Ahead of the pay-per-view, the Viper got himself a match against the leader of Nexus, and the winner faces John Cena on Raw Roulette. He had a score to settle after his team lost to Nexus on Raw 900, so that's why they had the match. As expected, the match had some drama. Darren Young interfered and cost Barrett the match was won, but the post-match action was far more chaotic. Edge and Jericho ran in there, and the Viper, despite all of this action, this drama unfolding, he looked untouchable. John Cena had a confrontation with his next opponent, and the question was, can he stop the momentum? When they spun the wheel for the match, it landed on Table's match, and for Cena, he got flashbacks to the time he lost to Sheamus, but he felt this was different. He's like, new season of Raw, fresh start. Man, Raw in 2010 was crazy. We had Chad Johnson or Chad Ocho Cinco over here doing some introductions. It's a whole different world compared to current day WWE. This was the first match Cena and Orton had since December of 2009. There were two different things about this one, though. Orton was a face, and it was a tables match. First Cena and Orton match, good. It's not like their matches aren't good, it's just the expectation is high, especially because of the perception WWE has of the feud. But, good tables match. There's a lot of drama since it was the go-home show of the pay-per-view. Everyone who interfered had a great chance of going through a table, and most of them did. Then, of course, there was that ending with Orton dropping Cena through the table with an RKO counter to the Attitude Adjustment. I mean, at this point, it was clear as day he was going to be champion. It wasn't Sheamus, and it certainly wasn't going to be Purple Man. The match in Champions was good. It wasn't out of this world, and I think the setting and the match type were memorable, but the action wasn't. Nonetheless, the favorite Randy Orton fought through hell. He took out Jericho with ease initially, but as the match went on and on, his chances decreased, especially as Nexus interfered. But he managed to steer clear only to run into a brogue kick. Despite this, he kicked out and rebounded with an RKO to win the WWE Championship. The face run that Orton had been anticipating in 2005 had finally come true. And it was well deserved because, as I said, Randy Orton was the most over babyface at the time. I thought I was cool for supporting Randy Orton over John Cena, who I just randomly hated because the fans hated it at the time. The next night on Raw, Sheamus ruined Orton's moment and whined about having the title stolen from him. The champion was called pathetic, and he was gracious to return the favor, calling Sheamus pathetic for never beating him. But despite all this, he told Sheamus to get his rematch quick, otherwise complaining to his face will get him a punt to the face. The Celtic Warrior saw through all of this and found it laughable that Orton would intimidate him and even threaten to kick his head. This threat was welcomed by the champion, and this is when the anonymous GM interrupted. They announced that the title match will be inside Hell in a Cell, and Sheamus was happy. An environment he wasn't all too familiar with, yet he was comfortable, especially after taking out Triple H. Hell, he even told Orton to give him his gold now. The champion thought he was on crack, and he questioned his honor and asked him to hand the title. Orton, though, reminded him that he wasn't an honorable man and would even RKO his grandma to keep this title. Now, even Sheamus' grandma, just to see the look on her face. Nonetheless, he handed him the title and hit an RKO. The build for the match at Hell in a Cell couldn't have been strong because of the 2-week length, but they made the most out of it. Why? Because Randy Orton flat out took Chris Jericho and wrote him up the show with a brutal punt. It showed that Orton, who hadn't channeled into that zone, could do it in an instant. The last time he punted somebody was long ago, and like that, Chris Jericho was gone. He was on hiatus again. And Sheamus was finally struck with fear. He finally realized what he was going up against inside that cell. Sheamus' tough guy image was going to be put to the test. Ever since he burst onto the scene, he constantly reminded everybody of his reputation and intelligently chose the correct moments to illustrate this. The match itself was solid. Of course, as intense as this feud was, it would not need a Hell in a Cell in another era. But this is when WWE brought the pay-per-view. Another thing to mention is that this match did not use much of Hell in a Cell. It was a full-on fight with very little involvement of the cell. There was this funny part where Sheamus hit the backbreaker on top of the steps and basically accomplished nothing. The challenger mostly focused on the champion's ribs and made a lot of progress. Orton had that vicious streak, but in some ways he took a backseat to Sheamus' mean streak, who proved he belonged inside the cell. Ultimately, Orton's RKO on top of the steps was decisive, and unlike Sheamus, he actually connected with a move on the steps. And that was enough for the victory. Good match. It didn't need Hell in a Cell because they used it as background, basically. The fight was mostly inside the ring, and it gave off a different style to Hell in a Cell. They didn't really need it. So where did he go from here? Wade Barrett. Barrett's contributions running Nexus eventually brought him to the WWE Championship. The main story though wasn't Barrett and Orton, it was more about Cena's involvement with the faction, and Orton threatened to put him if he got in his business. Nexus also imposed their authority and tried to take advantage of Cena to prevent him from saving Orton during this attack, and even threatened to fire him if he didn't win the title. At the time, it seemed clear as day that Barrett's time was coming. He had the main character of Raw on a leash and was constantly looking strong. This match though, the bragging rights match, is very dry. It was dull on many fronts. The story didn't benefit Orton, the action was forgettable, and once it came to an end after the Nexus interference and John Cena drama, it was relieving. Of course, the final parts of the match weren't nice, but that's basic. The point of the story here is that Cena got in Orton's business, cost him the match, but also saved his job, so Orton RKO'd him. The champion was the third wheel in his own title reign, which is crazy, because he wasn't no 2008 CM Punk, he was the most popular wrestler on the roster. And because of his attack on Cena, it meant they faced off again the next night. Except this time, John Cena had to fight for Barrett's option of a special referee. The match ended by DQ, meaning Cena won, and the leader of the Nexus wasted no time telling Cena that if he doesn't win the title at Survivor Series, Cena will be fired on the spot. However, Barrett winning the title means he's relieved of any duties relating to the Nexus. It was a no-win situation for the 10-time champion. For Orton, he was feeling the possibility of being wronged by John Cena, so this brought him out. He mentioned the tough situation he was in and was clearly conflicted. And the champion saw this as a sign of being screwed and said that if he does get screwed, Cena will be the biggest phony in WWE. Hustle, loyalty, and respect, especially respect, mean nothing, and he disobeys every champion, including himself, John Cena. He pressed him about being Wade Barrett's boy, and Cena went off on how Barrett runs things. He even went as far as to say that Barrett had the skills to win the title alone, but he won't. And there he was, the leader of the Nexus. He knew what kind of control he had over Cena and made mention of the stipulation. John Cena told me that he's not going to leave quietly, and regardless of the results, he's going to beat his ass after the match. Orton got involved and told Barrett he's going to beat him so badly that his stooge, Cena, is going to have to count to 10. Just as the brawl was about to begin, the anonymous Raw GM interrupts. Since they like drama, Cena's made the special referee for a tag team match involving Barrett and Orton. That match gave everyone a preview of Survivor Series as Barrett was on the losing end. Referee John Cena was back the following week to officiate a 10-man tag team match. Randy Orton, R-Truth, Daniel Bryan, Mark Henry, and The Miz faced the Nexus. Miz's briefcase was more broken than WWE 2K20 here. Actually, that's wrong. But Nexus used some devious tactics behind Cena's eyes to win the match, and Barrett acted like he accomplished a title victory as the group lifted him up. Orton was slowly getting more and more worried about Survivor Series and came to the conclusion that he should punt Cena in the face to prevent himself from getting screwed. The Viper was incensed and straight up brawled with Cena later that night, and this opportunity to punt him wasn't even close to happening here. So the anonymous GM wanted them to feature on Piper's Pit. Orton made a late appearance and saved the best for last. This image clearly illustrates what he was up against, as Barrett basically forced Cena to be an outright Nexus member with the t-shirt, with his allegiance, all that. He once again reiterated his statement from earlier and said that he thought of a better option, and he went after Barrett. Orton followed up with a failed punt and tapped on Cena and took the FU. Barrett's all proud when he takes one as well. Something had to give with this match. It kind of reminds me of Stone Cold and The Undertaker at Fully Loaded in 1999, except it was obvious John Cena wouldn't go away for a long time. The match was basic, action isn't memorable, and it wasn't expected to be because the main story is that of John Cena keeping his job and screwing Orton, or fired by doing the right thing. Barrett's ego cost him as Cena retaliated, leading to an RKO and the victory. And it finally set in for both men that Cena was indeed gone, and then they cleared the ring of Nexus. Cena gives Orton the belt and gets a send-off like he's going away to TNA or something. Despite this, he was on most of the show giving his goodbyes the next night, and this was after the anonymous Raw GM revealed that Barrett had a rematch for the title. The Nexus took advantage and injured Orton, and they left him limping right before the match. The injury left him doubtful for the match, but he was going to tough it out. Barrett immediately went after the leg and inflicted additional damage. The Viper was at his most vulnerable when from out of nowhere, Cena runs in, FUs Barrett and runs away before Orton hits the RKO to retain the title. Fans go crazy when all of a sudden you hear, "Awesome." Orton basically realized that he was done. Title reign, it was a nice one, but it's going to come to an end. Miz was 100%, no injuries, no disadvantage, and like a vulture, he took advantage of the injury and went to work. Even then, Orton still had some fight in him, and Miz was starting to realize that this was no easy match. He was up against the Viper, the Apex Predator, the WWE Champion. As Orton goes to the RKO, gets countered into the skull-crushing finale. 1, 2, 3, new champion. Iconic image. Miz was now WWE Champion. He had worked very hard in 2010, was getting noticed week after week slowly, and it was bound to happen. You know, if you watched WWE 2010, it was bound to happen. You were expecting the Miz to cash in successfully because he was, one, the guy they invested in the most, and two, he was one of the best talkers on the roster. So despite his limited skills, he had charisma and could talk on the mic, so WWE thought, you know what, let's push him. But overall, Randy Orton here was very, very over. He was arguably at his most popular as a babyface. His storylines just happened. You know, they weren't great, they weren't amazing, they were nothing like that. They just happened. The Edge story had some potential to it, but it really didn't fulfill the expectation that you would think of when hearing Edge and Randy Orton. His feud with Sheamus was a way of giving him the title, which he deserved. As he was, as I said, most over babyface on Raw. He was very popular. He had every fan on his side, well, for the most part, I believe. And overall, I feel like people forget just how over Randy Orton was. So I decided to make this video. I was like, you know what? Let's talk about the time when Randy Orton was at his most popular, arguably. This guy was getting a ridiculous reception on a weekly basis because he was basically the PG era version of Stone Cold. He was unpredictable, he was crazy, he did whatever he wanted to do and didn't care if it was a babyface, a heel, whoever was by his side. He didn't care if he would backstab them, attack them, RKO them, whatever. If it meant he'd get a slight advantage or some title, he would do it. He made his return on the December 6th edition of Raw. He didn't blame The Miz for cashing in, saying he would have done the same exact thing. Funny enough, he wasn't lying in his storyline. However, the big difference between himself and The Miz is the fact that he can back it up in the ring. Hell, he even claimed that the title's coming back to him tonight, but The Miz rained on his parade. First of all, he trashed Orton for being unoriginal. He's heard the same things from him coming from others. You're not good enough. You guys know that speech. Miz didn't seem all that worried over TLC. In his mind, it was a foregone conclusion that Orton was taking the L. The Viper, though, did not feel the same way. Why? Well, because Nexus wasn't going to be there to help Miz. Hell, he even said that A-Rye wasn't even worth half a man. His ego was crushed by this, and so he challenged him to a match. I don't know what the hell he was trying to say here, but he's like, Randy Orton's going to know what it's like to be A-Rye. Also, The Miz had the opportunity to choose what the pay-per-view match stipulation was going to be. In the ring, Orton caught Cole with the RKO. Riley, meanwhile, was getting a little too ahead of himself and was under the belief that he's actually beating Randy Orton. Miz didn't want to be embarrassed. You know, everybody's watching his moves. And yeah, about that, Miz didn't wait until after the match to attack. Afterwards, he wanted to demonstrate what kind of match is going to go down at TLC, but it turns out it was Randy Orton who showed him a preview of the tables match. Yes, that's the match they had at the pay-per-view. They had one more confrontation on Slammy Night, but on the topic of that, it was a weird-ass night. For one, this indie wrestler named David Arquette was there, and second, Angry Miz Girl won a Slammy. The champion didn't even let her finish the speech, and the douche ended up taking the award for safekeeping. Punk then asked if he's gonna sing happy birthday to her. Cheeky. After that, he began walking down to the ring, and I'm like, why is Arquette following them? Miz didn't even mention his presence at all. And the reason why he was walking down to the ring was because he had an impromptu match with Rey Mysterio that concluded with a dirty finish after Del Rio got involved. The celebration didn't last long because Cole announced that A-Rye's teaming up with Arquette to face Orton tonight. He didn't seem all that scared with the challenge, and also this has got to be the most random thing I've seen today. Despite this, he's got my respect for actually going through a table. Add to that, he actually donated the money he received from his WCW run to the families of Owen, Darren Drozdov, and Brian Pillman. Anyways, Orton sent Miz a message with a powerbomb, and just wanted to mention this whole thing because I doubt I ever will. Heading into the tables match, John Morrison won the right to challenge for the WWE Championship. Miz wasn't losing sleep over Orton nor Johnny. He was absolutely incensed with how people perceive him. The man was fed up, and that's the story of his title reign in under 10 words. Now, his match with Orton wasn't really that notable in my opinion. The ending though was cool. I'm not a big fan of tables matches due to the way they have to be structured, but anyways, let's talk about the match itself. Michael Cole, as expected, was still gloating and bragging about Miz's year. In the ring, the champion lacked any offensive game, and Orton was all over him until he made the mistake of being too slow. Nonetheless, Miz found himself in an extremely precarious situation, but he avoided it and went to work, barring a few moments. He was in total control, and also I wanted to mention that this was where Orton randomly used to execute the angle slam. This is a nice little addition to his arsenal. Even when Miz was in a dangerous situation, Riley saved his ass until the Viper knocked him down. Right when things clicked for the challenger, the ref got knocked down and he awkwardly side powerbombed Riley through the table before taking the skull-crushing finale. Miz, being the devious heel that he was, dragged Orton's body atop the broken table and retained the title. All of a sudden, the referee noticed the replay and restarted the match. Fans were loving it, Michael Cole's raging, whining about instant replay, but anyways, Randy was all fired up. The momentum clearly shifted in his favor and Cole wasn't enjoying this. Then Miz stopped his momentum dead in his tracks by shoving Riley into Orton, who went through the table, and the crowd was deflated. Well, that's a unique ending. The match isn't a favorite of mine, not bad, but it just fails to stand out. But nonetheless, that ending was so damn good. It fit Miz's character like a glove. First of all, he dragged Orton's body on top of the remnants of a table, and then follows up by barely winning it. Loved it. Still though, the feud continues. The next night on Raw, the self-proclaimed Awesome One gloated and gloated and gloated about his victory. The way the man spoke, you'd think Randy Orton had zero offense in that match. Suddenly, this segment turns whack with the inclusion of Alex Riley and Michael Cole. And this segment was sort of like the ghost of Christmas Past or something along the lines of that. Miz, he had zero remorse for being Jerry Lawler. This dork comes out and calls TLC unacceptable, and Miz didn't seem to look at things that way. His perspective was far, far different compared to others, and all that mattered is who's champion after the match. Add to that, he rubbed it in. Next up, Angry Miz Girl comes in and claims John Morrison will win the title. This was the ghost of the future, I assume. So he cut a promo on being the future before John Morrison interrupted. He told Miz that he beat him in the past and the present, and he was certain that that will happen in the future. The champion didn't agree with these statements, saying he's always been better than Morrison. A-Rai strikes, leading to Sheamus coming in, and they brawl. The King whacks Riley in the mouth, and before we knew it, the anonymous GM popped up. They announced a 6-man tag match. Miz has got to team up with Alex Riley and Sheamus against John Morrison, Jerry Lawler, and Randy Orton. All of a sudden, Orton came out and clotheslined that champion. And about the title picture itself, Orton wasn't exactly out of it. He told Morrison straight up that if he wins, he's coming after him. With regards to that opening segment, it was weird as hell, but I get what they're doing. It was a unique perspective, He had Miz explaining why he did what he did in the past, good or bad, and I thought it was unique. At the end of the night, Randy Orton aided the King in scoring a victory over the WWE Champion, and this was the first time in a while that The Miz took an L. Then the anonymous GM got involved, announces an Orton and Miz match for SmackDown, and all of a sudden the champions got the last laugh with a quick ambush. There's not much to say about this one, except the fact that Miz almost lost clean and almost took the punt. With Orton temporarily out of the picture, this forced the Miz to focus on John Morrison. Now with regards to Royal Rumble, a decent match. It's not something you should go out of your way to watch once again, unless you're watching the event as a whole. It's a very basic match, but let's talk about it quickly. Similar to TLC, The Miz didn't have any offense in the beginning. It was until Alex Riley got involved and he forced the challenger to work from under. He's trying to wear him down, he's gaining confidence, and eventually he got his when Orton hit the superplex. He starts fighting back, but A-Rai puts a stop, and things were looking bleak for Randy Orton. Miz was all over him, but one clothesline didn't. The Viper was all fired up, and despite 2 moments where Miz nearly stole the match, it was Orton's to lose. Then out of everyone to appear, it was the Nexus. Ref notices this, and Riley in the ring tries to take advantage. Orton's like, I don't care for anyone, and tosses him to the outside like trash. CM Punk suddenly comes in, and GTS's Orton giving the victory to the Miz. Again, not a favorite of mine. There's some cool moments, and it's just the fact that at times it felt dull. That's what I thought about the match. I want to know what you guys think. After the Rumble, the focus on Randy Orton and the Nexus began to increase, while the story of Cena and Punk was slowly dwindling. It was slowly coming to an end. The next night on Raw, Randy Orton made his presence felt. After failing to capture the Tag Team Championships, McGillicuddy and Harris were on the receiving end of an RKO. Just as Orton was going to go for the punt, CM Punk objected. He had to beg Orton in order for him to stop what he's doing. But this was essentially a dumb request because Orton went through with it and kicked Harris's head off. Punk promised serious repercussions, and all we had to do was wait. In the meantime, though, CM Punk explained his actions at the Rumble. He showed a flashback to Unforgiven 2008, and upon seeing the footage once again, Punk was seething. It reminded him of that dark night. Like, he's lost that title, and sure, he's won it twice, but that was the most bitter pill he had to ever swallow. And that's why he did what he did a week earlier. He reminded Orton that he hasn't forgotten about that night, and he's a patient boy. He waits and waits and waits, unlike him. And unlike Orton, his actions are defensible. Punk brought out the Nexus, and they attacked. Just a side note, Husky was sent back to developmental, and he eventually became the leader of the Wyatt family, as we all know. Orton broke free, got a little piece of Punk just a bit before Nexus overpowered him. CM Punk then hit the go to sleep once again, and the four men sat atop the fallen Viper. Seeing as he was in a foul mood, Punk was angry and wanted the Nexus to inflict damage on his chamber opponents. Some succeeded, some failed. Punk righted the wrong of McGillicuddy by blinding Morrison with some pepper spray or whatever the hell that was. Sheamus, Mark Henry got the job done already, and all David Otunga had to do was raise his fist in the air. John Cena, CM Punk tried doing some damage, but he failed. As for the chamber match, Punk managed to outlast everyone except for John Cena. But this wasn't without controversy. He was initially eliminated by Orton, but the Raw GM overruled the decision, citing Punk's pod door as the cause for his elimination. Because he had a clear disadvantage, the Raw GM announced Punk's back in the match. He ended up being the final entrant to enter the match, and this went in his favor. By the time he entered, Orton had just taken an RKO and a rope kick. The RKO hurt himself also because it was on the steel, as we all know. And he mocked Orton before hitting a vital GTS to eliminate him. The Second City Saint ended up finishing runner-up behind John Cena. The match itself was pretty incredible, no lie. Obviously, there wasn't blood, but the action was good enough. Morrison was Spider-Man. CM Punk was doing dastardly stuff like that. And once again, Cena won. The next night, Randy retaliated for the second time. This was after Punk suggested Orton walk away, not appear at WrestleMania at all because he doesn't deserve to. It was basically a plea for Orton to just stay away or be taken away. In the weeks leading up to the show of shows, Randy Orton was booked to face each and every single member of the Nexus leading up to CM Punk. If he wins, that guy that he beats is barred from ringside at the event. At the same time, though, he was on a mission to take out each and every single one of the members. Punk once again tried putting a stop to the punt. His efforts weren't listened to by the Viper, and out was McGillicuddy. And if you're Randy Orton, why would you listen? They retaliated the following week with an assault, and funny enough, it was actually Orton who stood tall by, you guessed it, punting another member of the Nexus. This time, though, it was David Otunga who was stunned. Now, Orton was winning all of these matches, but by punting him, I don't know. I guess he was insuring it or something. I don't know. Next week, Ryan lost, and nobody was going to accompany Punk to the ring at WrestleMania. Once again, Punt and Punk couldn't do a single thing. With the Nexus disappearing, CM Punk opted to go to the psychological and personal route. He met Randy Orton's wife. Upon seeing this, Orton sprinted as fast as the wind, but Punk was much smarter. He whacked him with a wrench and sent a little message to his wife. On the final Raw before WrestleMania in Chicago, I might add, CM Punk for the final time discussed his upcoming match with Randy Orton. The fans treated him like a big baby face, and he teased the fans, telling them that he could get any mindless sheep to do whatever he wants. And these mind games Orton has played have been nothing more than a false sense of security. He slipped up last week after telling everyone he likes to travel on his big bus, and Punk knew Randall cares about his wife. He said that Orton should have never punted him 2 years ago, and now he's cost Orton respect from his family. He said that they will never look at him the same, and if anything, he's just getting started. He promised that the chapter ends at WrestleMania, and all of a sudden, Orton appeared. He was a wounded animal, but this didn't stop him from bringing the fight. He hit the second rope DDT, and just as he teased the RKO, he had second thoughts. He wanted Le Punt. Unfortunately, his injured leg got the best of him, and Punk realized he was in there with a one-legged Viper. Punk successfully hit the GTS, and it seemed like the balances were in favor of Punk in kayfabe, because everyone else probably thought otherwise. I mean, who do you think was going to win at WrestleMania? Orton. Later that night, Orton promised to be at WrestleMania, and he asked the question of, will CM Punk make it out? Now, about the match at WrestleMania, I watched it about a year ago, and it was good. Could have been better, obviously, but the story was simple yet effective. Orton's taped up knee was worked on. He obviously sold it to the very end, and despite something being missing from the match, it was enjoyable. Punk was mostly in control, and that RKO was madness. I personally think if this match happened in August, November, December, it would have been much more unpredictable and much better. But yes, good match that could have been better. The impact of that RKO shouldn't be understated. Like, it was way bigger than those that followed, and even though an RKO like that in 2020 is cool, this was like one of the very first ones. Despite the victory, the feud had yet to conclude. Punk and Orton had a rematch on the April 18, 2011 episode of Raw, and one thing to note is that the rest of the new Nexus attacked Orton the previous week and cost him a title shot. This is what led to the rematch. Once again, Orton emerged victorious, barely though, and right after the match, CM Punk's little soldiers marched down to the ring and preyed on the Viper. Mason Ryan even wanted to punt Orton, but Punk convinced him otherwise. Funny enough, Punk wanted to do it himself, but just as he was about to go through, boom, RKO. So they basically blew a 4-1 lead. Punk was raging as Raw went off the air. Now, their match at Extreme Rules was the conclusion of the feud. Why? Because Randy Orton was drafted to SmackDown, and also it was last man standing. It was a proper conclusion to the feud. It was rough, mean, and it was decisive. Punk wasted a bit too much time throughout the match, whereas Orton was more urgent to drop Punk with an RKO. And as expected, he lost to a super RKO. often the one man on the WWE roster who lacked that title reign, Christian seemed to be the most ready. I mean, others like Jack Swagger won it, yet they didn't have a single attribute over Captain Charisma. Of course, youth and size come to mind, which is very, very, very important in the eyes of others. But in every other area, Christian has him. Size certainly wasn't the problem because guys like The Miz and CM Punk became champions, and maybe it came down to those in the back. I mean, we've heard the rumors, and Bruce Pritchard even went on Something to Wrestle and talked about how unenthusiastic McMahon was whenever they discussed Christian after talking about Edge. They thought he would renew in 2005, but then he was like, watch this, and went to TNA. Christian was provided the platform and prospered. He was his own man, and that's not saying he wasn't in WWE, but a mention of Christian always leads to Edge. He had an amazing 3 years with the company and certainly increased his stock, and by the time he returned to WWE, he was much better, but even then, he was relegated to ECW after a storyline of his was leaked. Obviously, they could have done more, but Christian once again proved his worth in leading that, no offense, dry-ass brand. Still, though, he had to wait it out. On the other side of the WWE roster, Randy Orton was at the very top. His character work really stood out in 2009-10 and led to a huge face run on Raw. Orton was Mr. Give No Fucks. It didn't matter if you were in a high position, RKO woman, he'll RKO them like nothing, and his unstable side was often a heavy topic in every one of his storylines, including this one. With 2011, WWE was the very same initially. It kicked up during WrestleMania season, and all that momentum and twists eventually led to a whole lot of new faces in the main event scene, and one of those twists was very heartbreaking. Edge was forced to retire and relinquish his World Heavyweight Championship. It was terrible for him in SmackDown. For SmackDown, they lacked somebody to carry them, and Edge for a couple of years was carrying SmackDown like LeBron carried the 2007 Cavaliers. Every time something went wrong, Edge was called in. And it's not like SmackDown didn't have the star power, but Edge was Mr. Reliable. Rey Mysterio, he was a big face and all that, but he was getting injured. Undertaker wasn't around for that long, Batista left, and Edge was the only guy remaining. Whether it was to hold the title and make a babyface look good, or become the babyface himself, Edge was that guy. It was a main event utility player and his value was ridiculous, so him being gone was going to be felt. Initially, Edge was supposed to face Alberto Del Rio at Extreme Rules for the title. This became a match between Christian and Del Rio. Regardless of what was going to happen, a new world champion was going to be crowned. This turned into a ladder match, and it was really amazing when you look at what it took for Christian to get here. It might have been because Edge retired that he was in this position, but I don't think it matters in the history books. He was finally a world champion over Alberto Del Rio, the most pushed wrestler in the company at the time. Even though he lost, I should mention this, it's like Man City or PSG. We know they're going to win that elusive Champions League eventually, and that's what happened with Del Rio 4 months later. For Christian, probably the most iconic moment in his career. There's those guys whose moment of holding the title for the first time is in its own way more special compared to others. Guys such as Eddie Guerrero, Christian himself, Kofi Kingston, all these men seem destined to end their careers without holding the coveted gold, yet here they stood as champions. On the May 6, 2011 episode of SmackDown, Christian kicked off the show as the World Heavyweight Champion. The man couldn't contain a smile, and he said that he waited 17 years to do this, and he raised the title. His dreams of winning the title pale in comparison to it actually happening, and the man was in tears after he said that Edge told him to enjoy this moment. He thanked them and the fans as well, and before he could continue, Mark Henry interrupted. He congratulated him and claimed to cheer for him. Why? Because he wanted to be the first to take the title away. Christian made fun of him for being fat, and Henry told him that Edge isn't here to protect him anymore. And then the Great Khali came out. He showed respect to Captain Charisma and wanted a title match as a former world champion, unlike Henry. And the champion was weirded out by these two, and to top it all off, Randy Orton was here. Henry was raging in the ring, and he knew that his title shot wasn't going to come to fruition. I mean, Randy Orton's in the ring. Orton wanted the match as well, and so Teddy Long tried to fix this situation. He asked the fans, and Henry and Khali were screwed. And it was official. Christian will defend the World Heavyweight Championship against Randy Orton, and the match was tonight. Man, SmackDown knew what they were doing in 2011, except for those stupid-ass replays. Now, even though the fans were happy, Todd Grisham felt otherwise, asking Teddy, isn't it unfair for Christian to defend the title so soon? Teddy talked about how Orton competed on that same night and how it's about satisfying the fans. The question was a whole topic on commentary, and it was heavily emphasized, but about this one, nice. Orton's methodical pace provided quite the challenge for Christian, and it also didn't help that he was damaged from Sunday. Nonetheless, he found an opening, and these two showed great potential in their first outing here. Orton had the edge throughout the match because of his form and, of course, experience. Christian was desperate to keep the title when they got to the final third, the final part of the match. The crowd was all in. Several quick counters, RKO, nope, kill switch, nope. Then Christian bounced off the ropes, and Orton caught him with a super clutch RKO that destroyed the commentary team. They went insane, as did the crowd. 1, 2, 3. New champion. While the fans were proud of Orton, the focus was more on Christian losing the title after 5 days. Tragic. Good match, but it's almost sad watching the ending as cool as it was. Even some of the fans felt it. This man worked his entire career to reach the pinnacle of WWE, but in 2 days, it's gone. He didn't even have a successful title match in this run. Now, the biggest question to come out of this is why? Well, as The Rock said here, because. But in all seriousness, Edge leaving put a huge dents in SmackDown's main event scene. Christian wasn't at his level, whereas Orton was. Do I think this should have happened? No. But I guess they didn't trust him to lead the show. I mean, when you look at the face of SmackDown, was Christian really going to be that? No. Otherwise, he would have won the title so long ago. Now, what did Christian have to say about the loss? In an interview with Between the Ropes in May of 2011, Christian said, "Obviously, it was underwhelming, surprising, and flattering to an extent. It's the age that we live in now with the internet and with spoilers and people like that. The show hasn't even aired yet, and people are giving opinions and these sort of things. You have to take it with a grain of salt, and the most important thing is that Randy Orton and I put on an amazing match for the fans." Now, I didn't know this at the time. All I did as a kid was randomly go to YouTube and watch some random wrestling stuff. But the fans were fuming on Twitter. They were cursing out Randy Orton for taking the title, cursing Vince for allowing it to happen, and complained about Christian having a 2-day title reign. It's somewhat messed up, but it happened. The following week on SmackDown, Christian addressed his title loss. He agreed with Teddy Long's decision to make the match, damn liar, and despite the loss, he felt confident of his chances at Over the Limit and said that 100% prepared Christian can beat Randy Orton. All of a sudden, Sheamus interrupted, and similar to Christian, he agreed with Teddy Long, giving the fans what they want. So he challenged Christian to a match. Mark Henry interrupted. He said that speaking for the fans and himself, they enjoyed seeing him lose the title. However, Sheamus shouldn't be the one that challenges him. Why? Because he's the red-headed stepchild that speaks funny. They ended up agreeing on something, and that was to attack Christian, so Randy Orton made the save. As a result of this, Teddy Long did the Teddy Long special and booked a tag team match. Now, Orton wasn't trying to be no good guy saving Christian. It was to ensure that he was at 100% when he loses at Over the Limit. Both men didn't let up at the end of the night, and it was a case of keep your enemies closer. Orton once again saved Christian from an attack, and Captain Charisma didn't feel as thankful as last time. They said that he wasn't mad at Orton taking the title away after 17 years and hoped that he shared the same feeling at Over the Limit. At the end of the night, Christian was in the same situation as Orton, but unlike him, it took a bit longer to make the save. Orton gets pissed over something, but they managed to drop the heels. The champion with an RKO in the splits. Man had to be hanging out with Riddle at this point. It's just so out of place. Was he on something here? Like Randy Orton doing the splits? What the hell? Now, Todd Grisham still pressed Christian on the whole 17-year thing, and once again, he said that he wasn't mad. He assured him that he's winning the title tonight, and Randy knows it. Randy told him that there's no feel-good story. The Seattle faithful, along with wrestling fans in general, didn't predict what would come. So up to this point, Christian worked 17 years, from the Brood to Edge and Christian to TNA, and finally, he climbed to the top of the ladder. It was an amazing story, but from out of nowhere, the title's gone. Randy Orton took it from him, yet he felt that need to tell everyone that he wasn't mad. This one was high-key one of the best matches from 2011. It had the intangibles of that hot crowd, two tremendous wrestlers, the chemistry, everything. These two showed great athleticism and went back and forth early on. It was just textbook wrestling, and on paper, there's nothing special about it. They're not bleeding, busting out some ridiculous moves. It was just back and forth action at its best. Both men were in form, they were perfect in attempting the moves, and it clicked. Christian had an actual chance of winning it, and it came down to a counter you couldn't see coming. It's like that punch or kick that's unstoppable in MMA, that shot on goal that the keeper can't save, as Orton catches him with an RKO. 1, 2, 3. A spectacular match between two world-class wrestlers, and you have to watch it to truly appreciate the greatness of this feud. There's a reason why others still talk about this feud, even though Christian was losing all the time. After that match, Christian seemed upset, but still managed to shake Orton's hand. Later that week on SmackDown, the world champion was set to talk about Over the Limit when, you guessed it, Christian came out. He thanked and congratulated Orton for Sunday and told him that he deserved to be the champion. Orton knew something was coming out of this, and as expected, the former champion said that the match could have gone either way. He knew that he could beat Orton and challenged him once again, so Sheamus came out and called him an addict. He told him to wait 17 more years and called him a two-time loser. Unlike him, he's a two-time WWE champion. Mark Henry follows up and told Christian not to miss the tea time with Edge on the golf course. Man, is this Comedy Central? They're just roasting Christian for no reason. He wanted a title shot as well. Teddy Long came out and booked the triple threat match with the winner facing Randy Orton. Similar to his last title shots, he came short as Sheamus won the right to challenge the Apex Predator. Christian was very upset with what had gone down and pulled a Dolph Ziggler saying it should have been him. He complained about how Orton was in his way during the match and he had it won, and he wanted one more chance, but Teddy Long thought otherwise. The man was so desperate for the rematch and was willing to have a triple threat match, and he was using Teddy's words to try and get him to make the match, but instead, he made Captain Charisma the special guest referee. Now, because Christian hated Sheamus, he cost him the match, then from out of nowhere, he struck the champion. The losses were annoying him. It got to the point where he's like, screw it. Hell, he even took it a step further and took the title with him. In light of this, he decided to address everyone on the following episode of SmackDown. Christian felt that the fans saw his perspective and how he's been screwed over recently, and even then, he thought that some of them didn't get it. So he turned on them and said that he didn't want to talk to them. Instead, he wanted to talk to Michael Cole. He told him that he wanted one more match for the World Heavyweight Championship. He deserved it, Cole obviously agreed, and Christian didn't understand how his fans that were so angry when he lost the title were now the same people who were furious with him. He felt that the fans had no right to ruin something he was working for 17 years, and about Randy Orton, he's never been disrespected by somebody like him. He also added that if he was a man, then he wouldn't have accepted the match knowing what he went through and Extreme Rules. He then asked Cole to ask the fans if he deserved to be the World Heavyweight Champion, and they were as expected in Christian's eyes, clueless, and said that he will be World Champion again. Randy Orton, meanwhile, wanted Christian to come out and say what he wants to say. All he wanted was one more match. Christian teased coming out to the ring, but decided to ask again for a title shot. Orton accepted and said that the results will remain the same. He left, at least that's what it looked like, because later that night, Christian returned and cost Orton his match against Sheamus. Orton suffered a concussion as a result of this, and Christian gloated about it. He said that this could be used as an excuse despite the fact that he, Christian, is better than him, and after he loses, maybe he'll give him a rematch 5 days later. Sheamus wanted everyone to not overlook him, and this led to Teddy Long booking a match between the two. If Sheamus wins, it's a triple threat match. This didn't go Sheamus' way, but it provided Christian a sign of what's to come at Capital Punishment. About their match, it was good but fails to stand out compared to others. Christian was dominant compared to last time, with Orton working from under. The champion was very aggressive on offense initially before slowly finding himself in control. Several impressive counters, but once again Orton catches Christian to retain the title. Good, just not on the level of Over the Limit or any of their other matches. However, despite losing the match, Christian complained to the referee about his foot being under the rope, so Orton added insult to injury, blasting him with a title. In light of this, Teddy Long addressed the events of Sunday. He admitted that this was a problem, the referee made a mistake, and apologized to the fans. Christian showed frustration, complaining about this, saying he was screwed and wanted one more shot. Teddy was like, it depends on if you earn the shot, and so he whined about how the referee made the mistake, not him. And Teddy Long roasted him, saying he's the one who lost. And then said that Christian's match was against Kane. This turned into a tag team match, which Christian ended up winning with the help of Mark Henry. And this in itself ended up screwing him over. Why? Because Teddy Long gave Mark Henry an opportunity to challenge Randy Orton, and that's if he beats the champion. Since Henry lost, Christian got the title shot. Later that night, it was time for the contract signing, and Christian brought out his contract and brought up a bunch of stipulations. He said that he knew he could beat Orton, as he did it on Raw 2 weeks earlier. He told him that nobody could save him anymore, and at Money in the Bank, he's going to prove that Orton can't beat him. The champion acknowledged that he respected Christian and enjoyed facing him in title matches, but he's beaten him 3 times, and now he's complaining about one more match. All this was starting to piss him off, and Orton mentioned his past anger problems, teasing something. However, Orton told Christian that a lawyer isn't going to help him win the title. He's going to beat him. Orton signs, but then Sheamus comes in and attacks both men. Now, at this point, it was obvious that the match itself, the Money in the Bank title match, was literally against Orton, yet he didn't give a damn. All he was focused on was Sheamus, and as expected, Christian interfered, but by the end of all this, it was the Apex Predator who stood tall. On the final SmackDown before Money in the Bank, Randy Orton gave his final thoughts ahead of Sunday. He wasn't worried over the DQ rules and said that there's more than one way to win. He saw it as a cheap way for Christian to win the title, and suddenly he appeared on the Titantron and said that his lawyers put that in his contract. He knows he could beat Orton without those stipulations. Being the nice guy that he was, Christian brought out a framed picture of the night he blasted Orton with the title. The Apex Predator thought this was pathetic, so Christian said that his family was. He made Orton's father look like a jobber and basically called him a low-level Hall of Famer. He also said that the only reason he's in there is because upper management wanted to keep his son, Randy Orton, happy. Orton wanted him to come down to the ring, but Christian said that it will come down on Sunday to beat him and tell the world how pathetic of a champion he was. Orton saw Christian as a pathetic excuse of a man, and after Sunday, he'll be known as a pathetic, bitchy man whose only claim to fame is from his best friend who helped him win the title for only 5 days. Man, Christian's getting roasted all the time, so what did he decide to do? Well, he decided to vandalize his bus. Meanwhile, Orton was set to face Kane. He's all busy when his Money in the Bank opponent decided to come out. Orton was well aware of the bus incident, and Captain Charisma knew there was a way to increase his opponent's anger, and that's exactly what he did. Even then, all he did was piss off a man who was not known to act right. About Money in the Bank, it was definitely better than Capital Punishment. There was more heat and excitement with this one. Christian was desperate to set off Randy Orton, and immediately after watching, you knew it was going to surpass their previous match. Captain Charisma was mostly in control and had the DQ in his back pocket. Once again, Christian had the RKO scouted similar to the other 2 matches, and this time around, he finally hit the kill switch, but Orton kicked out. It seemed like Christian's best shot as Orton was in form, and he was all over Captain Charisma, so he spat in his face, and the champion lost his temper. He's delivering strikes all over him, and then he low-blowed Christian, and the referee rang the bell. Man gets kicked in the balls, wins the title. The Apex Predator was not on the right state of mind at this point. His temper got the best of him, and he RKO'd Christian through the announce table. As for the results of the match, Christian won the title with a DQ. It kind of showed that he was inferior to Randy Orton, that he wasn't in his league. The title win was cheap, and it wasn't benefiting of holding the title because he did actually win it. On the other side, it really fit Christian's new character, who was so desperate to win the title that he would stoop low to become champion, a win that's cheaper than Julius from Everybody Hates Chris. Later that week on SmackDown, Randy Orton sat in the middle of the ring. He was going to sit there until he resolved his business with Christian, and there he was, the new World Heavyweight Champion. Christian felt the unfinished business is Orton's anger issues, not a rematch. He also didn't want him to complain about using his superior intellect to win the title. All Orton did was break the rules, knowing what was to come, and he was still pissed. Christian claimed that he didn't mean to spit in his face, and he saw this as justice as he's tried to fight incompetence Teddy Long, those that tried protecting Orton, and now he's back on top despite all this. And he was still not talking to the fans. Randy Orton wanted his rematch for tonight, and the new champion told him to go to the back of the line. He was about to take a beating, but Teddy Long came out and reminded Orton of his match with Kane. Even then, he went after the new champion. With Triple H as the new COO of WWE, he was essentially the most powerful guy in the company. Here, he was going to speak about the World Heavyweight Championship when Christian interrupted. He complained about Teddy Long and mentioned how he was forced to bring lawyers into the world title situation, and the reason why he came here was to ask what Triple H is going to do about it. The game didn't like whatever Vince used to do and told Christian that they didn't need a meeting to discuss anything. He told him straight up that Randy Orton is going to get his title shot at SummerSlam, and since Christian complains about officiating, it's going to be a no-holds-barred match. As expected, he complained, but then R-Truth came out. Don't want me. He complains about a conspiracy as well and got booked in a match against Randy Orton. And that main event showed once again that the world champion is screwed. Orton showed great confidence ahead of SummerSlam, saying Christian's never beaten him, and they were set to face off once again in a tag team match later that night. This one went Christian's way as he pinned the Apex Predator, showing that it's possible. Now, Triple H was very effortless when it comes to Christian's demands. He didn't give a damn. So Christian announced that he's going to sue the WWE. Why? Because he felt that Randy Orton competing against him in a no-holds-barred match is providing him an unsafe working environment. Triple H said that the match is still on, and he told Captain Charisma he has to make good on his contract, otherwise he's in breach. And he takes the title away from him as a result of that. Christian was holding on to it like Triple H used to in 2003 and decided to whine. Why are you doing this to me? I don't know. Why are you helping Randy Orton who attacked your family? Triple H put it simply. The fans and himself used to respect Christian. In order for them to respect him again, he should stop whining and compete against Randy Orton to earn that respect. At this point, he realized this is the only way, and he said it straight up. I'm going to beat Randy Orton on Sunday. Both men had some momentum behind them, even Christian, who lost his match by countout. Why? Because he let Randy Orton know that he couldn't wait for their match. He received the call, and it's going to change everything, and to put it simply, he had the best thing going. Now, this news was kept tight. Christian seemed extremely confident of his insurance policy, and he called Orton an overproduced, overrated flop, similar to Cowboys and Aliens. Now, about this one, superb, one of my favorite SummerSlam matches of all time. Randy Orton, a man at times driven by anger in pursuit of the title, he never lost by pinfall or submission. Christian, a desperate champion who perceived everything going against him. Teddy Long, the referees, and of course, the status of Randy Orton as a top guy in WWE. Christian was so excited about the announcement, and he didn't waste time. He brought out Edge. These two shared a moment, and unfortunately for Christian, this was not the homecoming that he expected. For one, Edge said that despite retiring, he was proud to open the door for his best friend. He was deserving of the title, and it was unfair for him to have defended the title 5 days later, but then he complained the next week, and the next week. But then he wins the title, by disqualification. Even Edge was shocked because this man was a devil. Even he never won the title by DQ. Hell, he even said that he used to do crazy things with style, unlike Christian, who was boring. And despite being his best friend to the day he dies, he didn't understand how Christian became a whining, moaning little bitch. And with that, the momentum swung to Orton's side. This match easily stands out because it was entirely different compared to others. Christian had way more offense compared to a bunch of their matches, and the heat for this one from the crowd and of course the action, it was befitting as the final match in the feud. Christian especially was so damn close to retaining at several moments. The kill switch, the concerto attempt that he screwed up by wasting too much time. He attacked Orton with a kendo stick, but messed up with the same sunset flip that got him to this very point, and Orton hit the RKO. 1, 2, 3. Tremendous match. It showed the variety these two had in the feud. Christian could work as a heel or a face in normal or intense situations, and if the feud were to end here, I think many would be satisfied. But wait, there's more. Because Christian was a whiny baby, he found a way to get one more match. Bret Hart embarrassed him here, and so Captain Charisma threatened legal action, claiming no wrestler received a title shot before him. The Hitman, who was GM for one night, confirmed that Christian gets his rematch for the title on SmackDown. In an effort to shut him up, Bret Hart booked a steel cage match. The odds were against him, yet Christian by Tuesday was ready. He thought everyone was against him and called himself a resilient person. He fought for himself, and at this point, he didn't need the title to validate his career, he just wanted it. With regards to the match, Christian was a cowardly heel looking for an easy way out. His cheap efforts eventually led to him taking control, but every time Orton would catch him. The champion was about putting work, and as Booker T used to say at the time, you gotta love it. They just had the talent to put on a good match effortlessly. So many unbelievable moments where the match could have ended, and of course the callbacks were here. Christian actually used some of them to his advantage. Orton finds momentum, and Christian's like, I'm out. So Orton RKOs him from the top. 1, 2, 3. Once again, amazing match. This one really put up a fight compared to SummerSlam and their Over the Limit match. It's really, really a hidden gem. It's one of the best SmackDown matches from the 10s easily. It was a great way to end the feud, and they didn't need this match, but it happened, and it was great. Alright, so that's the feud. Honestly, I love it. Of course, we have to acknowledge Christian lost a lot of matches. You know, Randy Orton was literally better than him. But at the same time, it's nice seeing him in the main event. I really liked when he turned heel and tried pissing off Orton to the point where he won the title by disqualification. Like, how many guys win the title by DQ? It didn't make him inferior in a way and all that, but still, it really fit his new character. The matches are must-watch, and this easily would be the best feud of 2011. But there's something else out there that was just a little bit better. My favorite match from here is probably SummerSlam. I really love the way Christian was whining and moaning. And then he gets Edge out here thinking he has a chance. Then Edge is like, I'm out. And so he's left to deal with an angry Apex Predator. It was nice. And with Henry whipping ass, he finally took time out of his busy schedule to discuss this Hall of Pain. It said that people have been thinking that his best years are behind him, so he asked these same people to ask Kane and Big Show about that. He said that his whole career has led to this moment. He's more aggressive, reckless nowadays than at Night of Champions. Everyone will look at the new world champion. Zack Ryder suddenly interrupted, and Henry straight up told him that he's got a death wish interrupting. The reason why Ryder was out there was because Teddy Long enforced a no-touch rule between Mark Henry and Randy Orton. As he's leaving, Henry orders him back into the ring, and he thanks him for the heads up. But again, he's like, come back into the ring. It's leading to something. This time, he asks Ryder who he thinks is going to win that match at Night of Champions, and he responds with Beth Phoenix. But as for Mark's match, he indicated a possible Orton victory, and in Mark's eyes, that was Zack Ryder's prediction. So he was ready to put his hands on him. Ryder strikes, but Henry delivers a chop that would make Walter proud. Boom, Raw Strongest Slam. And then a few minutes later, he destroyed Ezekiel Jackson. On the final SmackDown before Night of Champions, Edge hosted the Cutting Edge with his guests being Randy Orton and Mark Henry. The whole physical contact rule is still there, and Edge thought it was a good thing because Mark has been running through everybody. Basically, Edge was asking Orton, like, do you really think you could beat this man on Sunday? Orton agreed with Edge's sentiment that Mark destroyed the opposition, but reminded everyone that the last time he was attacked, it was after a steel cage match. Orton was trying to get into his head state and stuff like, maybe you think that at your best it's not enough to beat me. And as for the question of, can you beat Mark Henry? Orton doesn't think that, but knows it. Edge agreed that Orton's got a point. You know, Mark Henry's career has been disappointing. He mentioned how in 1998, Mark was a veteran while he was just starting out, and it was odd to Edge that this man wasn't a multi-time champion. He then stated, maybe, and he told him this straight up, Mark Henry lacks a desire. The challenger finally responded to the statement saying, Edge is lucky that he ain't gonna get it because he's right. For 15 years, Mark has seen men smaller and weaker than him become champion. He's seen Orton win the title over and over and over again, and then he mentioned how the upper brass tell him to go out there and smile. Henry was done with that. He was done with showing personality, and he was here to take what Orton's got. 15 years he's come out and tried to show what he's got, but it wasn't working, and it took him 15 years to get here, and on Sunday, he promised to be world champion. Orton, on the other hand, felt that the match was going to be symbolic of Henry's career. Sure, he may come close, but in the end, he'll be the world's strongest failure, and this is when Edge had to remind them that Teddy Long hasn't had no physical contact rule during the Cutting Edge, and so he announced that the Cutting Edge is officially over, meaning it's on. The entire locker room empty, trying to separate those two, but Mark was a force of nature. A little distraction gives way to the world's strongest slam, and Henry stood tall. The ring was cleared. Everyone looked like a jobber, and Henry hit it again before hoisting that title in the air. At Night of Champions, Mark Henry finally did it. During the match, he struggled with keeping Orton down. Add to that, he was in kayfabe on fire. You know, Orton was on a roll at this point. He was starting to get things together. The crowd, for the most part, was behind him, and at some points, it felt like Henry was going to pull a ton on him. You know, he was going to botch this thing near the end. Luckily, though, for that challenger, Orton was limping, and one of his legs was hurting, and so he tried pulling an RKO out of nowhere. Henry pushes him away. Orton gets up, and boom, World's Strongest Slam. 1, 2, 3. Listen to that crowd. Mark Henry went from being sexual chocolate, an addict, the hand thing, pushed down to developmental, all of that, but he's always remained on the payroll. Just as things get started, he gets injured, but now he's finally got the push that was deserved. It took him 15 years. Stone Cold wrestled for 14 and won the WWF title 6 times. But regardless, Mark Henry finally won the title. After the match, he shouted at the fans to stop cheering, calling them doubters and haters, and then he welcomed the fans to the Hall of Pain. Mark refused to share this moment with the fans because they didn't believe in him, and then he proclaimed himself to be a dominant champion. One thing to know at this point is the fact that Mark Henry was the strongest booked wrestler in the company, in my eyes. This is my opinion. It wasn't CM Punk nor John Cena, it was this guy. And people actually liked him. The ratings started to increase compared to the Orton Christian thing, and he was doing good. It was a good story, he's going through everyone who's gonna stop him. It's some simple stuff, but it was effective. Later that week on SmackDown, Mark Henry made his first appearance on Friday nights as champ. Why am I mentioning this? Well, just wait up. Once again, Henry is like, Teddy Long, you didn't believe me. Sin Cara, you didn't believe me. When all of a sudden, Triple H, the COO, appeared. Just as he's gonna speak, Christian comes in. He made himself seem like the locker room leader, sort of like Seth Rollins nowadays, and Captain Charisma felt Henry was unmarketable. Like, is this guy gonna be in front of a cereal box? Basically, what Christian is trying to say is that for business to be booming, he's gotta be world champion. Triple H responded by giving Christian a lumberjack match, and since he's demanding a title shot after Hell in a Cell, he instead gets the match tonight. About that match, well, again, it showed just how incredibly strong Mark Henry was. So the Lumberjacks tried jumping the champ, right? But it ends up parting both heels and faces alike like the Red Sea, throws Trent into a bunch of them, and Christian, the look on his face was as if they forced him to watch Raw this week or something. He's like, I don't want none, but Sheamus throws him in, where he received a super world strongest slam. Talk about an emphatic victory. All of a sudden, Randy Orton runs in, brings the fight to the new champ, but fails to hit the RKO. But he managed to force him out, though, so there's that. One thing I should mention is the fact that at this point, Randy Orton had yet to RKO Mark Henry. On the final SmackDown before Hell in a Cell, Henry faced the Great Khali. The match didn't really go down on Raw, so the rematch happened on SmackDown. Beforehand, though, Mark Henry was all pissy at Booker T, thinking he's flaunting his 6 title victories. Add to that, he was confused over Booker T, like, you're out here kissing ass, yet at the same time you're dropping insults, what's up? It was increasingly likely that Booker was going to suffer, but Henry luckily was out here for somebody else. As for Randy Orton, he was promising to induct him into the Hall of Fame. Because of all this, Booker had a problem with Mark's thinking. He didn't feel that Henry should focus on hurting talent. And again, he got offended mentioning the last 15 years. It took me this long to win the title, whatever. And then Booker's like, what if Orton hits that RKO? And damn, did Mark get angry. Henry was so self-assured of himself. He was confident. He believed that if Orton could have, he would have hit the RKO. It took him 15 years to develop this mean streak, and just now others are asking him to stop. No. Unfortunately for the Great Khali, he was inducted into the Hall of Pain, and the Red Pants my ass downgraded him from 85 plus to 65 overall. It was essentially a curse. As for Randy Orton, he told Mark that he better pray that an RKO comes his way because it'll be much worse. Of course he claims he's gonna win, yada yada, but after his match with Christian, Henry comes down craving a beatdown. He tries neutralizing him, and again, mission failed. RKO wasn't to be, so SmackDown was gonna end with the same damn picture, Mark Henry standing tall. But he decides to bring in a chair, and as he enters the ring, boom, Orton finally hits that RKO out of nowhere. Mission complete. About their Hell in a Cell match, well, it's often forgotten for good reason. Like during the early 10s, there were so many cell matches that you forgot happened. This match in particular didn't necessitate a cell match, but that can be said for many from the past decade. It wasn't a bad match. I'm not trying to say it was bad, but like the others, it just struggles to stand out. Henry was super resilient during the match, kicking out of the damn RKO, which got Orton downing himself. He goes for the punch, but is unsuccessful, and is caught with a world's strongest slam. Another dominant victory. It was clean, which is one thing I like. I love seeing a heel win emphatically. It's different to what we're usually accustomed to, and I just wish it happens more often. It's very rare. After the match, he slams Orton before going for the chair thing to induct him into the Hall of Fame, but the move like WWE 2K21 doesn't happen, and Orton ends up shaming him all the way to the back. And the way Henry ran, it's just straight out of SVR 2011, but yeah. His feud with Randy Orton was officially over. Now he was going to get a visit from a ghost of past. Randy Orton found himself in a feud with Cody Rhodes. The story had some elements stemming from their history and legacy, and initially Ted DiBiase Jr. was involved as well. It was mostly a side feud for Orton to waste time. Rhodes had a lot of contempt for Randy Orton, and they traded victories over the next couple of weeks, with Rhodes' victories always being cheap ones. Orton never challenged for the Intercontinental Championship during this feud, which is important to mention. It culminated with a Falls Count Anywhere match on the November 4th, 2011 episode of SmackDown. The match was pretty good, and it also set up Cody Rhodes' transition back to the dashing character, as Orton gave him a reason to stop wearing the protective mask. He won the feud, moved on to a storyline with Wade Barrett. Randy Orton was at a point in his career where he found himself in a veteran role, and it was early days for that. This was the beginning of veteran Orton. One of his first tasks was to make the former Intercontinental Champion look good, and it came at a great time because Randy Orton was at his peak. 2011 was a very noteworthy year for him, and to this very day, people still talk about it due to how incredibly motivated and incredibly consistent he was. Randy Orton initially had issues teaming up with others, but he had no problems shutting up Rhodes, Christian, and Wade Barrett, 3 men who share a history with the Viper. Wade Barrett came out and said that they have huge problems, and unlike Orton, he never started as a leader. people gravitate towards him. As for Orton, he's just a predator. The Barrett barrage continues at Survivor Series, and Barrett was determined to become the world champion. He needs to prove that he's Orton's in-ring superior and beat him to get to that goal. Christian said that unlike Orton, he's able to give others the leadership spot, mentioning how he gave his leadership role to Barrett. They were about to attack and Orton was aware. Sheamus makes the save and Teddy Long comes out to book some matches. He gave Barrett a match against Orton in the main event. This was the first time Orton and Barrett interacted in about a year. Wade Barrett dominated throughout the match but showed signs that maybe he's a little too deep. Suddenly he managed to cheat his way to a win with a thumb to the eye. Barrett showed his qualities during the build, but let's talk about the match. Randy Orton quickly made his mark with an RKO on Dolph Ziggler to eliminate him. Sin Cara suffered an unfortunate injury after trying to dive over the top rope, and the injury left him sidelined for a while. Rhodes made things worse, eliminating Mason Ryan. This meant Team Orton was down to 3 men. Kofi was unable to answer and Barrett eliminated him. Sheamus and Orton were left with Hunico, Rhodes, Swagger, and Barrett. These two were the toughest to figure out. Sheamus in particular was dominant, and it was to the point where he got himself disqualified. But it allowed for Orton to eliminate Swagger. He fouled up dropping Hunico, but the other two were far too much for the Viper to handle, and Barrett scored the victory. It showed just how much WWE saw in him and Cody to overcome the greatest wrestler in Survivor Series. Good match despite the problems. Barrett and Orton's feud continued to intensify, and they were both looking to win the world title. Barrett said that Orton's had a psychological advantage over his opponents, but him on the other hand, that's a different story. Both men were set to face off at TLC, but the match choice was to be determined by the Beat the Clock challenge. Wade Barrett was trying to make it seem like he was in Orton's head and using his own mind games and tactics behind him. He tried to cost Orton his match but failed. Even then, Barrett attacked after the match and congratulated him before suggesting a tables match. That didn't work, and instead Orton sent Ziggler through a table, confirming his match. Randy Orton continued to show Wade Barrett what he was capable of before TLC. This feud was Wade Barrett constantly provoking Orton and getting in his mind in an effort to see how far he could test him. Because for Orton, he's a master of this game, and most of his recent success is built off his mental tactics. So if Barrett takes him out, not only does he prove he's better than Orton at his own game, but also allows for him to challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship. With that said, their match at TLC was pretty good. There was a lot of dramatic moments throughout the match. Both men had great timing and pacing throughout it, especially Orton. Barrett dominated, he slowed down the pace, and at times almost had Orton. There was this one moment where Barrett hit him with the boot and almost sent him through the table, but ultimately Orton's mind games came to play here, and he caught Barrett off guard with an RKO to win the match. Decent stuff. I love that pay-per-view in general, but this was a nice match on it. Barrett dominated for the most part. He looked strong out there, and he lost because he underestimated Orton just a little bit. Okay, other than that, yeah, good match. Okay, the following night, Wade Barrett got his rematch with Orton, and it was a decent match. He was breaking the rules and got himself disqualified, leading to Barrett bringing out a table and sending him through it. This showed that Barrett was one step ahead of the Viper. Later that week on SmackDown, Wade Barrett bragged about being in Orton's head and showed some moments where he beat him. Barrett was proud of his accomplishments and thought that he should get a title shot. He left, but right as he walked to the back, Randy Orton came out and brawled with him. The Viper was on the verge of hitting the RKO, but Barrett made a run for it, only to have Orton follow him and continue where they left off. The Barrett barrage was no match for the Apex Predator, and Orton dropped him with an RKO on top of a car. This feud was far too intense. It was all over the place. They're brawling inside the ring, outside the ring, so they faced off in a false count anywhere match. Barrett was dominant early on. He had a strong hold on the match, but this only led to Orton going insane, and once again they made their way to the back. Barrett was aggressive, Orton was aggressive. They made their way into an elevator, and all of a sudden Barrett threw Orton off the stairs and ran away. WWE made it seem like Orton's career was in jeopardy, and Barrett blamed Orton for falling off the stairs. He thought it was ironic that the Rumble was held in St. Louis, where everyone thought Orton was going to come in and win it, but he's not going to be there. Sheamus interrupted after Barrett said nothing stopping him from becoming world champion, and this started a short feud between the two. They were brawling, trading wins here and there, and then Barrett faced Sheamus in a tables match, and his experience steered him to victory. It wasn't Jinder's interference. The following week on SmackDown, Randy Orton was set to return, and Wade Barrett still believed Orton wasn't the same after being pushed off the stairs. All that's on Orton's mind is him, but when the Viper came out, it was a different story. He came out with a lot of adrenaline and dominated Wade Barrett to the point where Teddy Long had to bring out a bunch of wrestlers to separate them, and that in itself didn't work initially. He dropped all those wrestlers, and Barrett looked worried. With that said, Barrett entered at number 26 in the Raw Rumble and had a short performance. Orton came in at number 28 and tossed him out. At least he debuted a new theme song. Orton was driven by pure hatred. He wanted to end the Barrett barrage, and his chance came later that week on SmackDown with a false count anywhere match. It was a no disqualification match. This was the final match in the feud, and they went all out. At least all out for TV. Orton was more comfortable in this role, and while Barrett did look strong throughout the match, Orton was one step ahead and ended the feud on top. He dropped Barrett with an RKO on the steel chair to win the match. This feud was a nice learning experience for Barrett because at that time they had big plans for him, and these plans were supposed to come to fruition really soon. Barrett had a decent showing in the Elimination Chamber, making it to the final three, but unfortunately though, he suffered a shoulder injury the next night on Raw after the Big Show tossed Ziggler into R-Truth and Barrett during a battle royal. He broke his arm in the process, and he was out. Barrett spoke about it in an interview with WWE Magazine. And I quote, "I remember Big Show picking up Dolph Ziggler and throwing him down on top of me. I'd guess Ziggler would be about 12 feet in the air being thrown down on me. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to catch him with both hands, so I figured I'd catch him with one hand because of the angle of his trajectory, so all that weight landed squarely on one of my arms, which just snapped at the elbow joints and unfortunately required surgery to fix it. It was initially diagnosed as a partially dislocated elbow, but after MRIs, we discovered it was completely dislocated, with additional tearing of 2 ligaments that go between the bones of the arm. They had been completely severed, which required surgery immediately. It looked fine initially, but I was aware how far out of place the bone was. Then obviously my whole arm went numb, and that's when I realized I was going to be out for a long time. This came at a terrible time. Barrett was set for a big push. There was a rumor of WrestleMania 28 bringing back Money in the Bank, and Barrett was the front runner to win it and hold the briefcase. That's a rumor. I couldn't find much about it, but there was a lot of reports at the time from the Wrestling Insider guys that'd be like, hey, Money in the Bank, WrestleMania 28 stuff. Wade Barrett was the favorite. If it was actually going to be true, it kind of makes sense because he just feuded with Randy Orton, and when you look at the guys in the Team Teddy match, the mid-card guys, he was probably the most viable if it was a Money in the Bank ladder match. If all those men were in a Money in the Bank ladder match with him. It just makes too much sense. And yeah, it's just unfortunate. Barrett's push was going, decent, stuff like that. Who knows? I personally believe he would have feuded with Sheamus for certain after this, because the only way is up. I highly doubt they were going to push him down if he wasn't injured at the time. He was feuding with Randy Orton, had some wins over Orton as well, so it makes sense for him to push him higher. And you gotta remember one thing, at the time, if you feuded with Randy Orton, you were bound to do some great stuff. So Wade Barrett was set to have a huge push at the time, but it didn't happen. So yeah. With that said, on the March 2nd, 2012 episode of SmackDown, Kane randomly went after Randy Orton of all people. The Viper tried his best to stop the monster, but failed initially. They fought inside the ring, outside, and Orton seemed to match Kane's level of aggression, but he wasn't fresh. Add to that, he had a lingering shoulder injury, so of course Kane stood tall. He grabbed the mic and welcomed Orton back because it had been nearly 2 weeks since Randy Orton last competed. Nobody understood why Kane attacked him, but it's odd to think that these two had never feuded. Likewise with the John Cena thing. They're both top guys, yet a feud hadn't occurred yet. After beating R-Truth on Raw later that week, Randy Orton appeared. He had a very vengeful look on his face, wanting to attain payback. Truth distracted Kane long enough for Orton to hit the RKO, and then he grabbed the mic and told him that it's good to be back. Since Kane does not take an attack of any kind lightly, he returned the favor on SmackDown, and it resulted in an evenly matched brawl in the crowd. At this point, you're wondering, why in the hell is Kane angry with Randy Orton? Yeah, we didn't get an answer yet. Kane just teased Orton with the pyro on Raw, but later that week on SmackDown, Orton finally addressed this. He thought it was odd that he was being the hunted, not the hunter, and Orton didn't mind a collision course of epic proportions, but wanted to know why Kane chose him. Unlike John Cena, he actually embraces hate and vice versa. Pyro goes out, darkness for 10 seconds, and there he is. Finally, an explanation. While Kane preferred to leave Orton in the unknown, he asked nicely. All of a sudden, a video package played of that street fight, the street fight that left Kane out of action. He despised everything about that night. Why? Because he was a poor excuse of a human being. He's shaking hands, he's limping, but that man was completely gone. He's wiped out. Kane needed closure, and he refused to rest until Orton was decimated. Viper was ready for a fight though, but it wasn't going to happen. Kane opted to have Orton's destruction, his dismantling, at WrestleMania 28. A week later, Randy Orton finally struck with an RKO on Kane, and there wasn't much intensity or heat coming from the story. Other than what I mentioned, there was a tag team match, but with regards to their match at WrestleMania, it's honestly forgettable. It's not bad or anything like that, but it's one of the last things I think of when I hear WrestleMania 28. Oddly enough, during the match, you can hear the fans chanting Daniel Bryan, but they managed to convince them, they managed to turn it around. Anyways, match was pretty slow until the final third when they went all out on offense. Best spot, of course, was the massive chokeslam for the top as it gave Kane the shocking victory, and it was much deserved. The guy had been putting over talent for several years, and nobody did the same for him. I don't think anybody expected him to win it. Did you? Oddly enough, though, they had a no disqualification match booked for that week's SmackDown. Obviously, there was more intensity for this one, and it was much better than the WrestleMania match. Also, I gotta mention that it served to be a precursor to their rubber bout at Extreme Rules. After the commercial break, Kane was finally in control. Orton took punishment, refused to stay down. He capitalized on Kane's mistake and thus began the comeback. He beat him up for about 2 minutes before Kane brought in the chairs. Didn't stop him though because Randy DDT'd him onto it, and his RKO attempt went south and Kane used the chair. Orton kicks out after several shots, chokeslam doesn't go well, and instead Kane bumps into the exposed steel and boom! RKO. Good match. Way more enjoyable than the Cena matches. The feud though wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Kane gave praise to Orton last week, but he felt that it wasn't right to end this thing so soon. He was having fun. He was having so much fun that he opted to attack Cowboy Bob Orton. Orton sprinted to the back, and once he saw his father, Kane blasted him with a pipe. So now the feud's kicking into a different gear. Even though his schedule was booked, Kane still found time to destroy Zack Ryder. Afterwards, he grabbed the mic and spoke about Friday. He revealed that like his father, Orton went down easily. Took a while for the Viper to respond, but he did just that on SmackDown. While his father will be fine, it's a whole different story with Kane. He was ready to show him how sick he could be, and Kane, meanwhile, was still talking about that attack. Hell, even questioned Orton's manhood, but he was quickly silenced. Why? Because Randy brought Paul Bearer into this. What is up with everybody trying to tie him up? There was Edge, there's The Undertaker, Stone Cold, and now Orton. This time though, Randy locked him in a freezer. Kane was livid, but in order for this newfound dominance to work, he didn't go after him. He didn't care that his father was stuck in the freezer. Suddenly, Randy Orton made his way out to the arena and a brawl ensued. Orton found a pipe and repeatedly blasted Kane with it to send him running. And about Paul Bearer, well, Kane had a change of heart. He freed his father, only to quote-unquote say,
"You could say from me."
On the final SmackDown before Extreme Rules, Michael Cole interviewed Randy Orton. He asked him if there's a way to stop Kane, and Orton's like, "The devil can't unleash hell like I will Sunday." Jinder Mahal of all people interrupted. He was talking about how they're going to kill each other Sunday, and as expected, he took an RKO. With regards to the match at Extreme Rules, good. No doubt in my mind was it Kane's best match up to this point, from December all the way up to now. Of course, False Count Anywhere rules. Orton quickly went on the attack initially, but it was no match for Kane's intensity. The Viper responded with several lead pipe shots before brawling in the crowd, back and forth action before they made their way to the staging area. The fight spilled into the back where Kane was in control, and then Zack Ryder got involved, leading to Orton bouncing back. Soon enough, they made their way back inside the squared circle where Orton was doing a number on Kane. He was building that momentum, delivering chair shots, but unfortunately, the steel post stopped him dead in his tracks. Not for long though, as he responded with the superplex. As Randy's looking to wrap it up, Kane catches him with a choke slam, so he opts for a tombstone on top of a chair. That plan backfired, and Kane was on the receiving end of an RKO. 1, 2, 3, cool. Back and forth action that got the crowd popping. Nobody had the outright advantage for long. But yes, that's the feud. During a tag team match on Raw, Sheamus accidentally hit the bro kick on Orton. Jericho capitalized and beat Sheamus, who was unbeaten for several months, and at this point, Jericho felt that he laid his claim to the title. Then to top it all off, Orton dropped Sheamus with an RKO, and the heels started arguing over this match when Orton came in, and it turned into a brawl. Sheamus confronted Orton over this, and he said that his clumsy ass dropped him, and it was a rough situation. So John Laurinaitis made Sheamus' title match over the limit, a fatal 4-way. The rematch with these four was far too intense, and once again, it didn't have the most simple ending. And it was almost the same thing at the end of the night. The final Raw before the pay-per-view saw the usual drama, and at one point on SmackDown, Sheamus scored a victory on Randy Orton, but once again, it was the Viper who stood tall. As for their match, the emphasis was mostly on Sheamus and Randy Orton. Chris Jericho, maybe. Alberto Del Rio was overshadowed, even though he was essentially the industry plan at the time. They're trying to remind you that this guy was going to be a huge challenger for the title. Who knows, maybe even winning. With that said, this was pretty damn good. Then again, it has Sheamus, Randy Orton, Chris Jericho, and Alberto Del Rio. So, what else would you expect? Jericho and Del Rio formed a friendship that quickly went terribly. The crowd was popping. Orton brought them the most excitement, but of course, Del Rio has to ruin everything. And at this point, man, if Orton would have won this match, it would have been insane. I also think they would have been fine with Jericho too, but in the end, it was the Celtic Warrior who emerged victorious. Man of the match is easily Randy Orton though. Awesome stuff. Fatal 4-ways always deliver, and this isn't a standout, but it does its job, and it's a very important match in Sheamus' run. The apex predator Randy Orton. Up to 2011, he had enjoyed quite the career. 2011 was a career year for him and one of the best and most consistent versions of him you'll find. And that came with plenty of motivation to be one of the best performers. Christian pushed him to his absolute limits, and it led to Orton being at his very best. There's not many years for Randy Orton that were better from top to bottom than 2011. Orton excelled and fired on all cylinders that year, and you wonder, is it because of his opponent? Because there's some guys that he matched with well, and they just have some amazing matches. Christian, Daniel Bryan, but as gifted as he was, there was still some setbacks. For one, Orton got suspended for violating the wellness policy in May of 2012. It seemed as if he would face Chris Jericho at No Way Out, but he also got suspended for kicking the Brazilian flag. Now, I don't know why Y2J did that. The heel heat gone to his head like JBL in Germany back in 04. So the match seemed cursed. Dolph Ziggler was probably Jericho's replacement looking at that week's Raw, but it changed everything because Orton was suspended for 2 months, and you gotta wonder, would they have added him to that Money in the Bank ladder match with the former champions? He had a second strike violation with this one, and it seemed like WWE wasn't high on him. At least that's what it felt like. Another thing to mention is that Orton wasn't booked much at this time because he was starring in 12 rounds too. A star of Orton's stature would obviously feature at SummerSlam, but they were taking things slow with him. He destroyed Heath Slater in his return match on the July 30, 2012 episode of Raw. Orton was just coasting along around SummerSlam time, and if Mets fan forever is to be believed, He was very upset about being left off the show. The only reason I added him here is because this guy had some sort of source in WWE. He had a lot of things correct, but these guys are always morons because they think everything they think or say has merit. So maybe it is pointless I mentioned him. With that said, Orton was trying to put his name in title contention. He was in a very odd position, especially compared to where he was earlier in the year. They even showed Del Rio technically beating Orton clean at one point. Later that week, Orton even tapped out to the cross arm breaker. It's kind of crazy and somewhat outrageous because this is Randy Orton. This is the guy they pushed hard in 2011, the #1 guy in SmackDown. Yet he's tapping out to Alberto Del Rio, who wasn't even in his prime at this point. In the meantime, Randy Orton faced Dolph Ziggler. The match served as a precursor to the real match at Night of Champions. Orton won the first match emphatically, and their second match saw Ziggler steal the win with a lot of leverage. Yeah, I see why wrestlers love to wrestle Ziggler. The build-up for their match was just competition. There wasn't much talking with them, and you can fill in the blanks. Like, you guys know how it is. Ziggler wants to use Orton as a stepping stone, and Orton wants to shut up this annoying upstart. There was a moment during their feud where Jerry Lawler suffered a cardiac arrest after their match, which was very unfortunate at the time. I remember that it was very big news. Now, the match between Orton and Ziggler at Night of Champions was very good. It was them mastering their capabilities, with the other two matches serving as preparation for this. I don't really like seeing a match on pay-per-view that you saw 2 weeks earlier, but watching this, these two brought out a lot more here. This was an important match for Dolph Ziggler, and he showed up here. His selling as always is great, but here, it was something else. Orton was dealing with fast opposition, but he still made it work for the victory. Good match. These two matched well here. Dolph always has high praises for Orton in interviews, and watching this match, I could see why. The Viper shifted his focus back to the World Championship for a moment. Alberto Del Rio and the Big Show, though, were in the way. Orton was attacked right before the triple threat match, so he returned the favor a bit later. Orton wasn't at 100%, but even then, he still put himself in good position. His efforts of getting a title shot, though, were unsuccessful, with Big Show hitting a hat-trick of choke slams to win the match. This came after Del Rio went after his arm. The feud wasn't that good because it didn't serve any purpose except having Randy Orton waste time. Del Rio mocked Orton in his entrance, made fun of him, and upon Orton's return, he whooped his ass like he was some enhancement talent from catering, and unfortunately, this led to a match at Hell in a Cell. Orton's look was pretty strange for that time period. It looked like his 2006 self a bit. With that said, Hell in a Cell was a decent match. It wasn't ever gonna be much because these two weren't lighting the world on fire at the time, but it had a small story throughout it. Randy Orton's previously injured shoulder being targeted along with the arm for the cross arm breaker. Orton was stuck on second gear, whereas Del Rio was on the fourth. That's the match because Del Rio always stopped his attacks and kept them away from much needed momentum boost. Anytime something happened, Del Rio would break that momentum like that just by going after the arm. What a smooth transition here. Orton drops him with a beautiful power slam. Awkward moment for the top. Was it? I don't know, but they quickly moved on. This moment was weird, but they turned it around with one of the most underrated finishes you'll see. Del Rio going for the enziguri and hitting nothing before landing down for an RKO. Nothing he could do but take the loss. Match, it's just there, nothing you'll remember, but that ending was definitely one of the best in that time period. The issues between these two still continued after Hell in a Cell. As you can see here, Orton brawled with Del Rio and catering, and of course, Drew and Slater were in catering. It was practically home for them at the time. Then we got Matt Striker wanting words from an angry Orton.
What, you gonna wear the plaid shirt? I gotta do nothing but job in 3 minutes?
The finale between these two came with a Falls Count Anywhere match. This was better than Hell in a Cell because they had more freedom to sell the feud with more intensity. You guys know how it ended. Randy Orton moved on from this feud and featured in the Survivor Series elimination match between Team Ziggler and a team captained by himself. Orton performed hard here, but it wasn't enough to overcome the 2-on-1 with Ziggler and Del Rio. He got through Del Rio, of course, because that's a given. It's common sense at this point, but Ziggler was too much for him. The Ziggler push was in full force. They had him overcome Orton clean, and he looked like the next rising star. Not one of, but the rising star. You guys remember WWE towards the end of 2012? CM Punk on crutches? Well, the four guys you saw at the time were Ryback, Sheamus, John Cena, and Dolph Ziggler. Oh, hell no. They teased continuing this feud. Like, I'm good off it, bro. There's not much with it. There wasn't much for Orton at the time because he suffered a shoulder injury. It was a short stay away from the squared circle, though. The Shield had his number around this time wanting to make a mark. So this led to Orton and Sheamus deciding, you know what? We've had enough. Orton and Sheamus began to get irritated by this, but even then the Viper preferred to do things alone. That would change though. He didn't win the Rumble nor the Chamber, and at one point he even jobbed to Jack Swagger for a second push, which is shocking, but the Shield were still a problem for Orton and Sheamus, and it made them grow closer to a partnership. They despised the Big Show, but because of this looming threat, they had no other choice but to put their differences aside. Big Show was the real difference maker for the duo, and once he knocked out Roman Reigns, they realized it was better to walk away. Even then, he still chokeslammed the Viper. The Shield had beaten Cena, Ryback, and Sheamus, but this team was a much bigger problem. I mean, any team involving Ryback is gonna choke. Big Show was a massive problem because he wasn't putting issues aside. Then after the match was made for WrestleMania, he came crawling. I mean, who were they gonna choose? Fandango? Oh, Ryback? Well, he was busy with Mark Henry. Big Show had some convincing to do for Sheamus and Orton to accept his offer, because they have a history with him. Booker T wanted to test the three men, but they were fighting NPCs in the main event. Egos were on full display here, but the real test was here, the Shield. They had too much tension all while the trio were making their entrance, but once the issue was in their face, they aligned. When it came down to it, WrestleMania and the Shield were too important for them to overlook. They looked like superheroes here, like they saved the stadium from an imminent threat. The imminent threat being a Jack Swagger main event push or something, I don't know. The match at WrestleMania was good, but the story was centered around the three egos. When it came down to it, they weren't united as much as the Shield. Orton actually took the pin and Big Show let out his anger on both men. Is this another heel turn? A heel turn expansion of sorts? He turned heel while being heel already. Big Show's one of the only people to do that, definitely. Randy Orton and Sheamus were pissed with Big Show and it led to one of the weirdest segments of 2013. They edited it on the network, but Orton forgot his lines, asked Sheamus what his lines were, which was hilarious. Big Show ran in and the fans cheered for him, saying thank you Big Show for interfering. He wrecked them like crazy and this led to a handicap match. They were treating him like Prime Big Show or something, but he wanted none after a point in the match. Big Show, almost a month later, was still upset over WrestleMania. Sheamus moved on from this to a feud with Mark Henry again, but Big Show was still on WrestleMania crying about it. Their Extreme Rules match was decent. I didn't like much, but they had some wild spots in there. And no, my opinion is going to change in a moment. Big Show landed through a table and Orton becoming a wrestling fiend and destroying him for the win. Big Show actually felt like a giant throughout this one. You know, this is one thing that I liked. Big Show was booked well. Orton had to punt him for the win. And by the end of it, I thought to myself, maybe it wasn't so bad after all. Orton breathed a lot of life into this with Big Show doing one simple but important thing. Be presented as a tough challenge. Because Big Show is very believable at the time. He beat Orton on multiple occasions over the last year. So it kind of made sense for you to believe that maybe he's going to beat him. Following this, it was back to the Shield. The Shield were still running strong after 6 months. And Team Hell No were growing an obsession with taking them down. 0 pinfall losses in their entire run up to this point. Okay, I remember this. As a kid, there was a rush of adrenaline to see Bryan return the Yes chant. It was the beginning of something for him. He was actually my favorite wrestler at the time. Team Hell No's issues were self-doubts. Bryan doubted himself and his ability to the point where he started believing he was the weak link. These matches were pushing the Shield's ability to the very limit, but every single time, they came away without losing the match. I don't know where he rediscovered this intensity in his matches, but it was becoming insane. Every week, this man would get more and more popular with no end in sight. Randy Orton's involvement in the story was as a temporary tag team partner with Daniel Bryan. They were set to challenge the Shield for the tag team titles. These three were on the same page, but they got one more chance on the June 14th episode of SmackDown. Okay, this is the one. One of the best moments of 2013 and one that basically created the hype behind Daniel Bryan. It was such a simple story with the good guys finding it hard to crack open these villains and overcome them. Week by week, they would get closer, but one way or another, the Shield would prevent them from getting the job done. This was one of the loudest crowds you'll hear. Problem is, the SmackDown air dryer was there. Look at that crowd. They were excited to finally see the Shield lose. The Shield finally lost their first match. Great moment. Moving on from this, Orton and Bryan failed to win the titles and Randy started calling him the weak link, which is ironic because he's the one that got the win in the first place. This led to a notorious match in Bryan's career, a match that infuriated him to no end because it felt like wrestling was woke now. The match was no disqualification. During the match, Bryan suffered a concussion without realizing it. The moment was either the dive through the ropes or this missile dropkick, but regardless, it was right after the missile dropkick that it felt like Bryan lost feeling of his left arm. So maybe it was the missile dropkick. He was a very tough man and they knew he was not in the best shape physically and mentally, but Orton noticed something was off and the doctors were there. This led to the angriest version of Bryan backstage shouting at Triple H, who made the call to stop the match. Orton's rematch with Bryan was no disqualification and it was way better. It was like they wanted to release all their anger on each other here. Bryan was becoming more and more undeniable and there was a lot of fire with his push up to this point. So naturally, he won. For Orton though, he earned more respect for the American Dragon. Money in the Bank was on the horizon and this meant something big for Bryan and Orton. They were featuring in an all-star ladder match for the briefcase. I remember this one well. I really wanted Bryan to win because he was very over with the crowd at this point. He was my favorite. And WWE had some other plans. Orton was really craving a title seeing as it had been 2 years since he last held championship gold. And this one had great energy to it. RVD was back and it was the most star-studded ladder match in history. You had a top 5 ladder match wrestler in Christian, a returning RVD, CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, Sheamus, and a determined Viper looking to end a 2-year-long drought. The match itself was wonderful and had great vibes. I remember watching it when it happened and it was thrilling. Heyman turned on Punk at one point, and Randy Orton caught me by surprise to win the briefcase. Also, Paul Heyman is the most unnatural face I've ever seen in my life. It's like a fish cosplaying as a golf player. Easily one of the best Money in the Bank matches. It might be top 5. I have 2005. In 2021, above it. 2019 maybe. Randy Orton was kept quiet for the build to SummerSlam, and there was this one moment during the build where he teased a cash in for SummerSlam. He proclaimed himself the real champion, seeing as there was a shadow casted above John Cena's title reign. Orton was also starting to show signs of a new character, or to put it simply, a heel turn. He let Bryan and Cena get jumped by the Shield, all for his benefit. With that said, SummerSlam was a career night for both John Cena and Daniel Bryan. Cena was working with an injured elbow, but even then he and Bryan put on a classic that often gets forgotten, seeing as the follow-up completely overshadows the match. Bryan won the match, but Orton crashed the party. He was ready despite being worn out from that match, so Orton preferred to do it another time. Then from out of nowhere, Triple H dropped Bryan to turn heel for the first time in 7 years, leading to a cash-in. All Orton had to do was go for the cover, just like his first title reign. He did it with his eyes closed. This was a stunning moment. I remember there was a big rumor the week of this show about a new version of the corporation, so to see it actually unfold looking back on that time period's perspective was crazy. Triple H turning into a villain was bound to be interesting, seeing as he was signing with Randy Orton again. It was much different this time around. Now it goes without saying, but this is a proper SummerSlam. It set the stage for WWE's biggest story of the next year, and it was something special. Mr. McMahon was looking for someone to represent his company. Cena didn't like him, Bryan didn't fit the traditional role, but Randy Orton checked all the boxes. Now I thought this was a cool moment, but my smile faded when I saw this image. So to take you back, the PS4 and Xbox One were about to launch, WWE 2K14 was near, GTA 5 hype was the most insane thing at the time, but there was this gloom in WWE because every week, Triple H would act like a dictator and have the roster, including the likes of John Cena, stand there and listen to a 20-minute promo of his. It wasn't all bad because in some ways the journey needs to have a struggle, but it's kinda annoying to see this image about 40 more times over the next 6 months. The Shield were the new associates of this faction, which would later be known as the Authority. The good thing about the Authority in a nutshell is that Triple H perfected this role of an executive who always looked out for what the fans needed as opposed to what they wanted. He's like, oh, you don't want this, you need that. For as much respect he had for Bryan, Triple H didn't think he fit the role of a WWE champion because that comes with a certain look and presentation. He also acknowledged his issues with Orton, but he put that to the side in favor of the business. In other words, he did what's best for business. 4 years can change a lot. Daniel Bryan was called out at this point for an ambush. He almost fought through the Shield, but Reigns dropped him with a spear. Then once he entered the ring, Orton connected with an RKO, and this was the end of episode 1 for the new series, The Authority. Triple H gifted Randy Orton with a brand new SUV, and you guys know, cars aren't exactly comfortable with wrestling. Daniel Bryan had the crowd's full support, and he interrupted and showed gratitude to the fans for supporting him. Triple H's hopes and goals for the champion to look a certain way is stupid, and it's ironic seeing as Triple H used to fight Authority. He called him big-nosed, and Randy Orton went to his defense before reminding him that he's the face of WWE. Triple H highlighted the importance of status in life. Randy Orton is an A+ player, whereas he is a B+ player. The COO gave him the Shield in a gauntlet match, all because he believed in him and that it's best for business. These three are the biggest menaces of 2013. Anytime you heard Sierra, just know your destiny was to stare at the lights. Daniel Bryan put up a very strong fight, but the Shield's numbers came to play. None of the guys on stage could do a thing because of the threat of their jobs, and Orton and the Authority had a very strong hold on Daniel Bryan at this point. They even had Big Show KO him with tears in his eyes. That's the thing with Big Show's career, bro. Everything about his career is like a humiliation ritual. It's just strange. He's a changed man. The next he's relentless. The next he's emotional. What's going on with the Big Show? Daniel Bryan did not offer much in the build to Night of Champions. His only big moment was on the last draw before the show, teasing what's to come. The build was like the light at the end of the tunnel for him. Maybe there was some hope for Daniel Bryan. Randy Orton's character was much more normal than previously, and it also felt like Triple H was the real main character in the story, seeing as he handpicked Randy Orton to be the face of WWE, and the fact that he holds so much power in the company. Randy Orton walked into this match thinking he had the ultimate plot armor, as if he had an invisible and indestructible army in front of him for this battle. These two have great chemistry together, and I personally believe it comes down to a perfect understanding of their characters. Bryan presented himself as the ultimate underdog. While he doesn't know if he can get the win due to external forces, he was trying his best. Whereas Orton was a confident villain with all the support and a strong career up to this point. His biggest worries were trying to not give Bryan any chances to believe he could get the job done. A part of that involves shutting down the crowd, because they're Daniel Bryan's strongest weapon in his arsenal. He turns every match into a home game of sorts with the support from the crowd. Orton made a career out of dissection, and this match was no different. He went for Daniel Bryan's left arm initially, but it didn't turn into much throughout the match. Bryan was growing tremendously into this match to the point where he was starting to have Orton on the ropes. Funny enough, despite being the hero, Bryan was much more vicious with his offense than Orton. Then boom, he hit the knee and the ref counted a bit fast, but Daniel Bryan scored the victory and won the belt. It was such a weird finish, and you could see with the crowd then and there. They were a bit confused. The story of the match was Randy Orton struggling to shut down this momentum that Bryan had, and there wasn't many moments where the challenger was in huge danger, none. The match didn't fulfill its full potential as evident by the future, and it was clear that they were saving more for the future. The controversial finish would come into play the next night when Triple H stripped Daniel Bryan of the WWE Championship. Triple H took the title and it was officially vacant. This wasn't exactly what Orton wanted because the title wasn't his, but the Authority wanted to bring back the demonic Randy Orton from 2009. they thought he was missing that edge, and I don't think you want that domestic terrorist around. It makes sense now that Orton seemed more calculated and vicious in his later matches, because I thought it was odd how Daniel Bryan was the most aggressive person in the match with the heel Randy Orton. The bitterness and anger from Randy Orton would carry over later that night. He demolished The Miz in his hometown of Cleveland, and he destroyed him in front of his family, and nobody was gonna do a damn thing because dealing with Demon Randy Orton is practically a death sentence. This was becoming a huge problem for the locker room, so they decided to go after the Authority at the end of the night. The big match that WWE was building to was a rematch between Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton. Battleground for the vacant WWE Championship. The locker room stood behind Daniel Bryan, but despite this, he was still at a disadvantage, seeing as Randy Orton had the entire machine behind him. The two contenders had one final confrontation ahead of Battleground. Orton came to the realization that Triple H keeping the title away from him allowed for his potential to be reached. Bryan took notes of this and understood that Randy Orton needed motivation from others to reach his full potential. That wasn't the same story for him. Orton was getting rattled from this unwavering support from the fans, so he got personal. He didn't understand what was wrong with Bree's mind to marry someone like Bryan. He called him a barnyard animal, and a one-sided brawl follows. Orton's plan worked well as his vicious streak was on full display here. Okay, the build to Battleground was about unraveling a dark side of Orton that hadn't been fully explored in 4 years. For Triple H to exact his plan to have a face of the company, Randy Orton needs to become as cold and heartless as the Authority themselves. Now, Battleground 2013 is one of the biggest scams in wrestling history. It's such a bad show that it makes you look in the mirror and think, why am I spending money to watch Sunday Night Raw? Their match had more wrestling to it and had a better structure than Night of Champions. Orton wrestled way more as a heel and had a stronger grasp on the match, which makes Bryan's comeback more satisfying. The roles are much more defined here, and that's the difference maker with this match. It offered a lot more from these two. The crowd was really into it, and it seemed like it was about to enter another level. But then Stone Cold Steve Big Show came out. He's acting like a renegade, signing with nobody, even though he's supposed to be on Bryan's side. Big Show actually got an incensed for the first time in his career and didn't try a heel turn here, and he dropped the corrupt ref followed by Randy Orton. You'd think Bryan was winning the match with this moment, but it ended like it was Raw. Horrible ending. What makes it so bad is that it was on pay-per-view and it was the main event for the biggest title. It's so stupid. The next night, that was a good moment. I really liked the moment where Big Show KO'd Triple H the next night, but they were putting too much stock in him for this story. With that said, Randy Orton continued stalking Daniel Bryan and making things personal. The next match was Hell in a Cell for the vacant title. Shawn Michaels was added to the story being the special referee, and HBK had plenty of respect for Bryan seeing as he trained him in the beginning. HBK was the guy in the middle, the bridge in between Triple H and Daniel Bryan. Despite the issues, Randy Orton acknowledged Daniel Bryan's resiliency and his tenacity to get back up after everything he's dealt with. But even though he's gone through all of that, he's never been inside Hell in a Cell. This is one small thing I like. WWE has always made it a point to tell you that Randy Orton is at his most comfortable inside Hell in a Cell. The structure gives life to his evil and dark thoughts. Triple H continued to push the B+ narrative, and Michaels didn't like how the game said he wasted his time training him. Randy Orton's symptom of being a domestic terrorist involves paranoia. He thought HBK was out to get him, whereas Triple H believed Shawn Michaels will do what's right for business. Randy Orton's confidence was untouchable. He still believed that Daniel Bryan couldn't beat him. Then the Big Show became Stone Cold again and came out in a big ass truck. All that was missing was the beer. It's not so weird how WWE is moving with Big Show because this sounds like something they do. Him and Kane every once in a while would have some big program where everyone knows they won't win the WWE Championship. Hell in a Cell is a pretty odd one. These two always did great with each other, but one way or another, something with regards to the story would get in the way. The drama between HBK and Triple H was far too much here, especially in the later parts of the match. At times it felt more important than this story with the title. It was also the most non-Hell in a Cell match ever. Orton's viciousness should have reached its peak here with him becoming a demon inside the structure, and watching this match, this one didn't need Hell in a Cell. It just so happened to be October. Best moment of the match was Bryan dropping the game with a knee, but when it came down to it, HBK was with his friend. He wasn't happy about the result. When push comes to shove, he chose his side emphatically. Now, WWE had concluded the Daniel Bryan story. We didn't know how it would unfold in the near future, but for the time being, Randy Orton was off to other things. This feud had good matches here, but there was always something in the way. It was never a matter of keeping things simple with them and having them go all out, because they have great chemistry. It has to be said. Great chemistry, their characters were defined very well in their matches, but the best work from these two was yet to come. Monday Night North Korea was back in business. Randy Orton had another title celebration, but there was no Daniel Bryan to crash the party. Big Show, though, was the exception. The Shield tried to take him out, but the faces weren't having it. This was Big Show's yearly main eventer boost, so you knew he would look good in this segment. All of a sudden, he was treated like he was 97 overall. He ran out of tears a month ago. He's not crying anymore, he's a rebel. The Big Show Paul White is a rebel. Big Show KO'd Orton to the shock of the Authority, who realized there might not be an answer for the Big Show. This story was fodder. If you're like, what do you mean fodder? It's just filling in the gaps. WWE always has these, but it's another to have it for the Big 4 event. One problem I have with Big Show challenging at Survivor Series is that there's no threat of him winning the title. In addition, he declined a lot throughout 2013, a much different person from the beginning of the year to the end. In the lead up to Survivor Series, Randy Orton had a side quest against Brad Maddox. It was a Raw GM at the time and they wanted to reprimand him. It was a mauling and practically a free opportunity for Orton to lash out and inflict the utmost damage. You know how it goes. Make the heel look scary and dangerous. He made a big mistake going after Big Show alone and became enraged over there being no protection. It was basically him wanting to know if he's got their trust. After everything that's happened the last 2 months, there's reasons to have doubts. And his doubts were actually valid. It went from bad to worse with the confidence in Orton at an all-time low. So they tested him by having him face the Big Show with no help. Randy Orton seemed to understand that the authority was relentless and had no mercy, but at the same time he was seeking their approval. Now this match was a very notorious one. WWE pay-per-views were at an all-time low, by far the worst period for pay-per-views because the best matches were on Raw and SmackDown at the time. Piracy was a big thing. You could watch this show right when it ended or even live in certain ways. And WWE wasn't really giving you a good reason to see something different here, especially if you wanted to pirate the show. This match happened at Extreme Rules 6 months earlier and was infinitely better. The result wasn't predictable, and Randy Orton dominating a big man for most of the match wasn't exactly interesting. Let's talk about it. Orton was rattled and a bit out of it. I don't know if this was a mistake, but it was funny regardless. This match was dull and it went the way you expected, and it seemed like the crowd wasn't interested. Ref drama, authority comes out, and Orton takes advantage with an RKO and a punt to win the match. This is the first punt Orton had in a long time, but it wasn't presented as well as it used to because Big Show just hopped out of the ring. John Cena came out and it was clear where WWE was going. For about 2 years, fans had been under the belief that WWE would unify the titles. It simply comes down to the brand split ending. It makes too much sense to have them unify the belts, and of course it had to end with these two. Cena and Orton were the two biggest wrestlers of the late 2000s, and the title unification thing also served the trustworthy story for Orton. In some ways, it also tied into Orton's past and wanting Triple H's approval back when he was in Evolution. There was still tension between them, with Orton feeling like he didn't need their help to prove that he's the face of the company. Dana Bryan chants intensified and the fans were insistent on him. Orton said he took punishment from Big Show unlike a certain somebody. Randy Orton at times had to convince himself that he was the face of the WWE, constantly mentioning it. John Cena came out and this led to the announcement of the title unification match for TLC. Cena laid out the match for the audience and he wanted to see who was really the #1 guy in the WWE. Fans were actually hyped for this in the arena because this was for all the marbles. It's the biggest title match based on reward in over a decade. Randy Orton was still bitter over that mean from the previous week, and for as many matches that Cena and Orton had in the past, none of them involved the latter. From one perspective, this is one of WWE's biggest matches of the 2010s. John Cena the next week made sure to use Orton's relationship with Triple H as a way to get in his head. For many years, the game had this grand expectation of Orton, and while he succeeded mostly, he was still missing that extra factor to push him on Cena's level. He spoke about this in a different way here, but it was ultimately a promo where Cena indirectly said he succeeded where Orton failed. Randy Orton had this extra motivation to make good on this expectation. It was about the titles, but also doing good by Triple H. John Cena cut deep into Orton's skin with these remarks. There's the brawl, some ladders, chairs, and of course tables. Cena threw him through that table with so much intensity. What followed was one of the most fun segments. It's also a perfect image of WWE in its situation at the time. A red-hot underdog hidden from sight, yet overwhelming the segment. This Raw was in Seattle and the fans were going insane for Daniel Bryan. It was some crazy stuff. They got some real icons in the ring, but all the attention was on this guy. The segment also showed why John Cena is one of the best promos. He had a great understanding of crowd work, and this crowd had their full attention on somebody who wasn't even involved in the story, but John Cena reminded them of the battle and the prizes they were vying for. Randy Orton said that John Cena made a huge mistake not taking him out last week. It was his chance, but now it'll be a lifelong regret. The fans were chanting boring, but that would change. Orton provoked many of the legends in the ring. Why? So he could use them as an example of his cold nature. This is where John Cena is smart. He heard Orton say something about work and made Bryan the main character of this moment in the segment. He gave them what they want by fulfilling their goal of getting attention. John Cena trashed Randy Orton like crazy, and the funny part is, this man had a WrestleMania main event, multiple title reigns, he feuded with all the top guys and had something great coming out of it, yet John Cena found a way to make him seem like a career failure. He also made himself seem like the opportunity guy, mentioning giving Dolph Ziggler, CM Punk, and Daniel Bryan a chance. Cena made sure that Orton knew that he was dealing with the best version of himself, and all he hoped was that Orton would be at his best and that they wouldn't hear no complaints from him after he loses. They shook hands, the titles were raised in the air, and Orton cheap shotted him. This led to a full-on brawl and Stephanie got knocked down by Orton. Triple H retaliates, and after Orton recovers, he sees his worst nightmare: John Cena potentially joining the Authority. Okay, this match is a situation that gives way to eternal success. The honor of being the champion of champions. John Cena is vying for just another accomplishment, whereas Randy Orton, on the other hand, was battling for his career. His legacy was at stake along with his title. TLC 2013 was much more creative and different to other TLC matches. You can notice these guys were adamant on trying out different things, and it's not going to be the best TLC match. I had issues with it, especially because of how strongly hyped it was. Cena and Orton just lack those special matches, and out of the 30 or 40 matches they had, there's only like 5 I really rate. This isn't one of them, but it does have historical value due to the titles unifying, so technically, it was one of the bigger WWE matches. You might find something to enjoy here, but for me, not so much. The ending looked miscalculated, but in the story, that brutal slam of Cena's head onto the table was enough for the win. And with that, Randy Orton unified the championships for the first time in 12 years. This was enough to give the Authority their actual full trust in Randy Orton as the name and face of the WWE. Dictatorship Episode 7. John Cena looked humbled and out of it. Randy Orton had a sense of pride over proving everyone wrong, and TLC was a moment where he took the opportunity instead of having it handed to him. John Cena ran down his parade, basically called him a target and said he wanted to face him, but not tonight because that honor goes to Daniel Bryan. Cena even made it a title match. I guess he is like Hulk Hogan. The fans wanted it, the Authority were interested, but they were interested in a non-title match. Now it goes without saying, for months there was always something in the way with these two, but even then they've showed glimpses and potential of something much greater. This is by far their best singles match. Raw, December 16th, 2013. A casual night showcasing the fallout of TLC has brought out a hidden gem. It's not supposed to be a hidden gem, but it is because it comes in between a lot of big things. Pure wrestling with Daniel Bryan edging out the Viper when it comes to competition. Bryan had a very unhealthy obsession with damaging Orton's leg, and that was the main story of the first part of the match. Act 1. Randy Orton had to become a vicious animal to even have a chance. Look at this clothesline. It was an important part of the match as Randy Orton officially took control after nearly 10 minutes. It worked well for Bryan to target Orton's leg, so he focused on the left arm. He quickly undid Daniel Bryan's work with a lot of intensity and venom with his work towards the arm. This also caused an element of desperation for Daniel Bryan, who used all his energy on a suicide dive. All it did was make his arm an even bigger problem. Randy Orton was determined to cause some sort of bone injury with his work here. Every time Daniel Bryan does something one way or another, he finds himself in a worse situation. And it was great work here because Randy Orton was continuously doing some sort of unique attack to inflict additional damage. Daniel Bryan did get something going, but it wasn't constant, and his opening with instant impactful moves such as his sudden kick. And a similar element of Bryan's matches from this time was on full display. He would force a comeback, and he did it with a lot of passion and intensity like he was fighting for his life. The best part was Orton selling the yes lock like hell. He probably forgot for a second that this wasn't a title match. Bryan was unloading, fast paced, too fast for Orton, especially this late in the match, and Orton's like, screw this, and delivered a brutal low blow to escape a destined loss. John Cena comes out and beats him up. Big mistake focusing on Bryan because this opened the way for Orton to drop him with an RKO. Okay, this was a tremendous match. Orton didn't really sell the leg much in the later parts, but it's no big deal because the story was far more compelling with Randy Orton dissecting Bryan's arm and making it useless. One of the best TV matches of 2013 easily. These two have great chemistry together, and I don't think any of their previous matches come close. The Cena and Orton thing continued to heat up, and we once again saw the super insane version of Randy Orton. Now, Kofi Kingston beat Randy Orton. That's enough to make him go off the deep end. But why would John Cena's dad sit front row on a show with this lunatic? He beats him up, assaults an old man, then Orton comes back to life and has to make a run for it because his rival is here. John Cena was full of vengeance, but it went from bad to worse as his old friend Batista was back. And Batista made it clear he was going after the title. It also seemed like the Authority wasn't putting all of their cards behind Randy Orton. He was trashed by them for his actions on Raw, and they threatened firing him. He blamed them for his anger, saying they were the ones that put him in a rematch against John Cena, brought back both Brock Lesnar and Batista, and there was a lot of tension, and Orton believed he wasn't really their guy. Triple H cuts through him, but in a motivating way, telling him that he should try and find answers to his situation. Batista was back, and Orton was more envious than ever. This man to the Authority looked like their answer. The animal made its intentions clear, and Cena meanwhile was ready to return the favor at the end of the night. He did get something in, but Orton had to steal a car to escape. Okay, Royal Rumble. This is one of those matches. At the time, it was a Daniel Bryan show, so you know that crowd was gonna try and do something here. They did just that and refused to let WWE forget about his name. Also, the fans were never gonna allow for this to be anymore. How do fans affect matches? Well, they're loud as hell and take the focus away from matches. Cena and Orton know each other very well, and it's not like the matches are awkward or they don't have good chemistry, but on paper, you can't see much of a difference with their matches if you look at them from a distance. With that said, Randy Orton answered everything in this match. Cena was busting out something different. Cena was hitting this random ass neck breaker, which was random, and this is a very weird match because he has the elements of a great one. Why do I think that? Well, I'm gonna explain it. Cena and Orton play the element of surprise here a lot. It was very back and forth with the match, with the edge slightly going to Randy Orton. Cena locked in a horrible STF and Orton was tapping. The ref was down though. And this is when the match got crazy. Belt shot. Ironic. AA for a near fall. RKO, not enough for the win. We Want Divas chant intensifies, and you know this was cooked when they were chanting that in 2014 of all years. Orton stole Cena's move and locked it in way better. It was funny seeing Orton hit an AA, very weird. But did Orton hit the... Yeah, he did. This match was funny. At this point, it felt like they didn't give a damn about what the crowd would say, and they were throwing a lot out there. Cena had the match won with the Wyatts came out, and you knew the crowd would love this. RKO off the distraction, 1,
2, 3. I can't say this was a terrible match, honestly. You guys heard me say it was egregious, but that was before I actually watched the match. The crowd was doing a lot to voice their complaints, but honestly, me personally, Wrestling Premiere, the YouTube channel, honestly, I can't say it's as bad as I thought it was. It's a 6.5 or 7 out of 10 type match. Maybe you liked it more, maybe you hated it, I don't know. But I love the finisher stealing moments. It's just these two faced off a lot in the last couple of years. I like when matches surpass your expectations. And I'm not saying you will really like this one, but maybe if you watch it again from a different perspective, you'll find something to like about it. Like in the time you probably hated it horribly, maybe now it would change. The next night on Raw, Randy Orton bragged about winning but quickly complained about defending the title in an Elimination Chamber match. Batista stole his thunder for the second time and he reiterated the statements from the previous week, but the only thing apparent was the boost. Brock Lesnar showed up, and after some promotion from Paul Heyman, Randy Orton was very uncomfortable in this scenario because the Authority was just finding ways to stack the deck against him in favor of trust. WWE is lying like crazy, teasing a Batista and Brock Lesnar match. Also, this was ridiculous. It wasn't even close to happening, and they were teasing it for half of the night before abruptly having it disappear. Orton was trying to remind everyone that he's the main attraction of WWE, but that wasn't working well for him because Triple H was considering putting his faith in someone else. But if Orton wanted to keep their trust, he's going to face 5 other chamber contestants. They were talking crazy because they got to the point where they considered having Daniel Bryan as the face of the WWE. As expected, this main event was wonderful. It's not as good as their previous match, but it was definitely better than the others. Surprisingly, Daniel Bryan pinned Randy Orton clean in the middle of the ring. Next up, he faced Christian. This was a solid match, but nothing close to their previous battles. Also, one thing I dislike is how Christian didn't understand the springboard was the most cursed move when facing Randy Orton. It's like Ric Flair on the top rope, it doesn't end well. Triple H on Raw said they weren't just reconsidering Bryan, but the rest of the contestants, and it went from bad to worse for Randy Orton. It's one thing to consider one guy, but at this point, it's like they were doing all of this in spite of him. But he understood that he had to become the Viper for the rest of his run. They didn't trust him, but he assured them that it was all gonna happen. Daniel Bryan, on the other hand, wanted Kane. Bryan wanted Kane, but Triple H said he'll face nobody. Bruh, I just seen this match, oh my god. No one's telling me I have to watch it, but I feel like it's kind of a given to watch because it's a bit of an important one in this title reign, even though it's non-title. Solid one though, honestly. This is a solid match. I'm just fed up with the constant John Cena Randy Orton matches. But let's talk about it quick. Cena and Orton got that Los Angeles crowd invested, although it took some work to do. But for the second week in a row, Orton lost clean. He seemed like he was starting to crack under pressure. This was a time where he was about to have the toughest match of his reign and WrestleMania 30 on the horizon, and it had brought Randy Orton closer and closer to the breaking point. Cesaro on SmackDown. Okay, this was right when he was starting to gain some momentum. Orton still had Sheamus on Raw, but this was much different to the other matches. It felt like Cesaro wanted nothing more to not just beat Orton, but flat out dominate the match. Fresh matchup not just in terms of opponent, but also style. Cesaro was low-key a beast, and Cesaro's wrestling style was unorthodox when it comes to opponents that Randy Orton faced. And coupled with the energy from Cesaro here, this should be considered a hidden gem. It was exciting, then you get the surprise ending with Cesaro beating Randy Orton. Yeah, I recommend this one. It's not that long, and we got to see a very motivated Cesaro who understood the opportunity in front of him. The Sheamus match was decent, but then the Shield randomly came out, leading to an all-out brawl. This might be an Attitude Era brawl, because it was that intense. With that said, this Chamber match was great and gives you a strong understanding of WrestleMania 30. It's very underrated. I watched it a couple of years ago and thought, why didn't I watch this match earlier? Christian and Sheamus kind of feel out of place in this. If it was 2012, that wouldn't be a question, but the match was great because everyone shined here. Bryan's story was the best here as Kane cost him the title, leading to Orton retaining the title. Bryan's performance stands out here because even though the chances were low, still felt like there was maybe still some hope that he would win. Since Orton was always on the receiving end, he decided to go after Batista and mention the boost. Batista tried turning into a passion merchant for a moment, but he said that if they boo him, he'll do the same. Batista was leaning towards a heel turn, and honestly, it was much needed. The fans were going crazy at this point for Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. It was unavoidable. So the heel turn was the easiest thing to do because he was instantly in his element, and the fans already hated him. Daniel Bryan had the opportunity to be added to the main event, which further enraged Randy Orton. Batista was also upset over having somebody take a spot in his match, a match he got from winning the Royal Rumble. The game made fun of them for allowing Daniel Bryan to get in their heads. Batista flipped that insult over to Triple H, saying same thing for him. Randy Orton said the fans were cheering Daniel Bryan because nobody believes in Batista. Why? Because nobody cared when he left. Batista said they cheered Bryan because Orton sucks and called him a paper champion. Triple H lashed out on both of them and implied Orton couldn't win without somebody holding his hand, and the only person you could trust is yourself. So Triple H decided to make himself a potential challenger for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. Both guys are fuming. Evolution triple threat. In another world, that would have been the match. Orton took advantage of Batista and RKO'd him. This night didn't end well because Bryan beat him and Batista returned the favor after the match. Randy Orton and Batista were bickering like kids far too often, and Orton was too busy telling Stephanie that he won't be held responsible for what he does to her husband at WrestleMania. Batista came out and this thing was so damn toxic. Oh man. Batista constantly said he's walking away with the title at WrestleMania and told everyone to deal with it. Batista despised Orton for sucking up to the authority, and he randomly said that Stephanie's been drooled on many times before. Randy Orton was laughing it up, but then he took a spear. Batista's delivery was hilarious here, and I was laughing the whole time. So this led to a no disqualification match. Both men wanted to destroy each other, and Triple H on the side was enjoying the battle. That is until Daniel Bryan showed up, but it ended up being a no contest. With that said, the WrestleMania main event was very memorable. This was Orton's second WrestleMania main event, and he came out to a live performance from Rev Theory. This match came after a stunning moment. It was very quiet in the arena, but they quickly remembered why they were in the stadium. I watched this for the WrestleMania 30 video here. I remember I forgot the hype from it and thought it was one of those matches left alone in their time period, but they really got me into it once the Authority came out and tried preventing Daniel Bryan from winning. Bryan ran out in the beginning with all the intensity. He was a huge problem despite the injured shoulder from his match with the Game. Orton and Batista didn't realize they needed to become a duo to take him out, and it took a long time for them to understand that. The near falls were convincing since WWE themselves always stunned the audience when it came to Bryan's story. The best part of the match for me was later on when Orton and Batista teamed up. It felt like there was no hope for the underdog. Great back and forth, finisher spot, near falls, then Bryan pops up, and even then, there was still that moment where Batista had it. Randy Orton actually enjoying the boost from the fans for the first time in his heel run was something to mention, and Daniel Bryan ended up winning, as he actually made Batista tap out. Batista tapping was huge because he was positioned to win the title originally here. Tremendous match, but the heat between the three villains was intensifying. Both Orton and Batista wanted their rematches, but Triple H wanted to finish the job himself. They got a tag title match, and Triple H had to assure them that when they're on the same page, nobody could stop them. They had issues, but since they were getting their title shots later on, both men were on the same page. Batista and Orton used this match to last shout on the champions. It wasn't about winning. Meanwhile, Triple H was setting up the pieces for a potential 14th title run. Raw after WrestleMania had a crazy vibe back in the mid-10s. The Shield, Batista, Randy Orton, they were all out there to ensure the Game wins back the title. Light work for the challenger. The Shield were seen as a death knell, but that was far from their intentions on this night. The Shield were rebelling, and Triple H knew that this situation was going to go awry. The Shield completed their face turn, and this was chaotic. Everything was going terribly for Triple H, and if WWE's 2014 needed one image to describe it, I'd say it's this one. Orton and Batista were roped into this Shield thing, and it got so bad that the Game had an idea. Now, they weren't really cool with the idea initially, but that idea was accepted once the Shield overwhelmed them. The Shield, meanwhile, had to face the gatekeepers of the 2014 mid-card division. Look at this lineup. I could smell the food and catering just by looking at them. What is this? The numbers got to them, and Evolution for the first time in 9 years reformed. The fans didn't react much to the return of Evolution, which is upsetting because you have to think. You hear that watch in the beginning of the song and you feel no emotion. They victimized the Shield, and this was an exciting program. You had the three most interesting new talent around going up against a faction that has deep-rooted history in WWE. Triple H was feeling like he was back in 2004, and all that was missing was Ric Flair and the world title. I think if Vince joked about a year-long title reign offer here, Triple H would have taken it in that moment. To Triple H, he felt like the Shield needed a humble reminder of what their position was in the world. We're the real big bad guys. Well, the Shield wanted to put that to the test. Ambrose told them that there's a reason why they were chosen to serve and protect the Authority. Rollins promised that the Shield was going to be the hammer that drives the nail in. But Evolution had protection here. They had so much protection, so the Shield did their homework. 3MB thought they had a chance to get Seth Rollins alone when they looking at the lights for the last 2 years at this point. Like, just Seth Rollins alone would beat them. This SmackDown episode felt like an Attitude Era one with the Shield playing main characters here trying to take out their competition throughout the show. All that time, he could have ran. The Shield wasn't even doing stuff like this when they were heels. They overcame the competition, which served very well for their chances at Extreme Rules. At the same time, the Shield were a much bigger problem than what Evolution thought. Okay, the tag team match was great. I think this was a point where if the Shield had competition in these matches, they would make sure that match would be the best on the show. Very well worked tag team match with the Shield showing a very different side to them here as underdogs. This was their match specialty, but they found themselves overwhelmed. This spot was the roughest in the entire match, and it was great also because it wasn't obvious that the Shield would win, because there was a possibility that Evolution would win. They had their moments, but there was this one part where they exploded like crazy. It was amazing. The best kind of chaotic match. The Shield scored the victory here, but it was far from over. Evolution quickly retaliated by taking Dean Ambrose's non-existent title away from him and attacking the Shield again at the end of the night. There was a collective thought with the trio that would soon learn applies to them. Adapt or perish. The feud was reaching a boiling point, and it was clear that a resolution needed to be made, because the Shield were becoming OP. When it came time for the contract signing, the Shield threw out the table and chairs because all that mattered was the battle. Triple H said that this was the last time that the Shield would ever be on Raw. Huh? Evolution won this brawl, and it didn't bode well for the Shield. Blue Tista memes back in 2014 were so easy to make. I would even consider joking about this now because to me it's such a non-factor. It's like whatever. This was a solid follow-up to Extreme Rules. It was no DQ and elimination rules. One thing that makes Extreme Rules better is the length. Now of course length helps, but sometimes it's not needed. Extreme Rules was very compact and intense all through the way. and the match was 19 minutes. Here, it was a bit different with Evolution almost having it figured out by jumping the Shield one by one and leaving Roman Reigns alone in the middle of the ring. Evolution severely underestimated the Shield's resiliency as they got Batista. Orton almost had Rollins here, but instead Ambrose eliminated Orton, leaving Triple H. They overpowered him and scored the victory. The Shield was at a career high and emphatically proved that they were better than Evolution. Triple H still thought they had a chance, but then Batista demanded his title shot. He didn't get it, so he quit and did a funny wave goodbye to the fans. Alright, side note. Personally, I think in some ways that SummerSlam should have been an Evolution triple threat. I would have liked that just for the vibes and the fact that their story has a conclusion. Randy Orton took this moment to remember that he's still the face of the WWE, and he was set to face Roman Reigns in the main event. Triple H came out the sledgehammer and said there's always a plan B, and you guys know what happened. The heartbreak of the summer of 2014. Triple H was standing there like he found the next big treasure, and it was a stunning moment. Just when you think the Shield was going to reach even greater heights, they were cut loose at probably the most important time in their career. It was such a big moment because you thought to yourself, they had a win over Evolution. Surely like this thing's gonna continue. But no, they ended it from out of nowhere. Okay, Randy Orton was added to the Money in the Bank match for the vacant WWE World Heavyweight Championship. This ended up being a good ladder match, but the fans had saw the best earlier that night. Orton's performance though was pretty impressive here as he cut his head open at one point, but it didn't stop him. Look at this spot. Orton was selling like crazy and taking beatings. Smooth RKO here, but he didn't win the match. I remember everyone was so mad about Cena winning here. A lot of people were enraged, but little did they know their favorite would be considered buried if they booked them to win the title here and have that match at SummerSlam. John Cena was the right man in hindsight, even at the time. Next up, a fatal 4-way for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship at Battleground. This build wasn't much, but Roman Reigns looking like the strongest wrestler on the entire roster. I don't think I've seen someone so consistently dominant in a build for a match from this run like Roman was. The Authority were looking to take the title off John Cena, keep it as far away from the likes of Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns. Two of those guys sound funny in this conversation. Yeah, they don't want John Cena and Roman Reigns as champions. Oh, the Authority doesn't want as champions? The Fatal 4-Way wasn't that good. Kane and Orton teamed up throughout it, but their alliance didn't last though. Cena retained the title here, which wasn't surprising, and tensions arose between Kane and Orton over Randy refusing to tag in a damn handicap match. But judging by Reigns being a Superman in July of 2014, maybe he was right. The Authority retaliated the following week with Orton invoking a brutal attack on the big dog. This was the first time since his singles run that Reigns took an actual beating. He DDT'd him off the barricade, all because of the WWE Championship. Then to top it all off, an RKO on the announce table, but since it didn't go through, he did it again and it was great. This feud was a way to get Roman Reigns to a higher level. The guy was booked super strong only 2 months into his singles run, and they were going all out with him. Now, if I remember correctly, this was good, but I don't hear much about it. Let's talk. Reigns was by far the aggressor early on. He showed dominance against the Viper in the beginning. Orton's best bet was slowing down the pace and letting his experience shine. It was pretty cold in the first half. Great counter from Reigns for the Samoan drop, and that was by far the best thing he did in the match up to this point. Reigns kicks up the tempo, and damn, this guy was super quick off the ropes. I forgot Roman was this fast. Great counter from Orton on the spear. It had so much venom in it that Reigns might have suffered whiplash. This RKO though is top 5. It made me go crazy in 2025, like damn! I feel like time stood still and Roman knew he messed up big time. It was incredible watching it here during the match. Orton though took too long on the punt leading to the spear and the win. This match had a lot of good elements, but it was missing stuff. For one, Reigns wasn't his 2016 nor 2015 self here. He was super green at this point, very inexperienced, yet he was pushed super hard. So like a lot of people were starting to notice, hey, this guy's pushed like crazy, because he was, bro. You'd hear it, you'd see it, the commentary every week would be like, Roman Reigns did this, Roman Reigns did that, and it was like, oh my god, we've had enough. This wasn't even the WrestleMania 31 build as well. Randy Orton was still looking for the title shot, but Chris Jericho made fun of him for losing all of his rematches, then made mention of his SummerSlam loss, and so Orton responded. He called Roman Reigns a piece of crap and said if he was here, he'd drop him. Reigns came out and asked him to do it, but he didn't then. Orton's focus was on somebody else. Chris Jericho. He assaulted him after his cage match and inflicted additional damage to his knee. Orton took offense to Jericho, saying he was handed everything in his career, and he said that it wasn't his fault that he, Jericho, had to work twice as hard to get what was easy for him. Not of champions between these two is often a match that nobody talks about. Orton's aggression in the beginning allowed for him to take a strong hold in this match. Jericho was working from under as usual in the feud with these two. They probably only had one singles match where Orton was a face and Jericho was a heel. For the most of them, it was the opposite. Randy Orton was very strong with Chris Jericho offering nothing for the entire first part of the match. I thought Orton was facing a jobber during this one. He was doing nothing and getting punished for several minutes. Y2J didn't do much, but once he got going, it was quickly undone with a great power slam. Now, I don't know what was with Randy Orton, but his power slams during this time were insane. This is when they kicked it up a notch. Orton was starting to take risks, but they weren't paying off. The issue with Orton was that his big moves weren't working. Jericho put him through hell with the walls here, but it wasn't enough for the win. Great code breaker from out of nowhere, but what about this RKO from out of nowhere? Upon further inspection of this match, why the hell is Chris Jericho just accepting his fate and just doing nothing about it? Randy Orton scored the victory in style, and it was a good match. I think this would be loved more if you watched it in real time because it wasn't that good to me watching it here. Randy Orton began to develop some tension with the Authority's golden boy Seth Rollins. Both him and Kane were annoyed with backing Rollins and saving him in the Money in the Bank briefcase. Stephanie put out a rumor that Orton's gone soft, but it was all for the benefit of the Authority, and he knew it deep down inside. Rollins made himself an even bigger enemy of John Cena and Dean Ambrose, so of course Kane and Orton had to come to his rescue, while he's at the center of all of this with the briefcase. Oh yeah, this moment, it's so silly, but I liked it, I'm not gonna lie. John Cena AA'd Orton, who was doused in mustard, and at this point John Cena and Dean Ambrose really wanted that match with Seth Rollins, but Triple H told them that there could be only one opponent inside Hell in a Cell. Ambrose ended up getting in the match, so Cena had the secondary option, which was much better, because in storyline, his match was for a title shot at the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. So did he really lose? No, because at the end of the day, he's John Cena and he's always going to get a title shot. Maybe the fans were losing because it was Orton and Cena again, and the last time they were inside Hell in a Cell, it wasn't exactly a good match. The issues continued to grow between Rollins and Orton. The Viper called this match with John Cena the real main event because of all this talk from Seth Rollins, and Triple H had to reveal that Seth Rollins was the one who suggested the title opportunity. It went from bad to worse as Rollins called the Orton title win a miracle before teasing a cash-in. The Apex Predator went out to the ring for a confrontation with John Cena. Now again, these two faced off far too much. We know that, but surprisingly, this wasn't the main event. It felt like these two were slowly becoming a thing of the past before our eyes. Orton went back to 2002 talking about how he had way more hype around him than John Cena, but with time, things change. Orton had a strong focus, almost an unhealthy obsession with winning this match. The WWE also made it seem like an end of an era of sorts with these two. Funny enough, this actually was, but we didn't know it at the time. John Cena came out and said that everyone knows Orton is gifted, that he's a future Hall of Famer, all of that, but the moment he speaks, he proves he's a dumbass. His issue was talking about the old days like a moron. 2002 was 12 years ago. But Orton was made fun of like crazy here, and Cena said that Kansas City, the baseball team, the MLB team, the Kansas City Royals, had 100 losses that year, but it was also the last time Orton was relevant. Okay, John, we're gonna act like you weren't held hostage against your will in 2009? Or is that a year we don't talk about? Cena told Orton he had no chance to win this match and all he wanted was a match with the Beast. Great promo from John Cena where he called himself the man that runs the place. What makes this a good promo is you could feel his emotion and aggression wasn't fully tied to Randy Orton. It was with Brock Lesnar, so by proxy, Randy Orton was in the way and he was gonna plow through him. Paul Heyman came out and talked about how WWE retconned the 2002 OVW4. They tend to forget about Brock Lesnar. Cena had enough of the talking and nearly AA'd Heyman. Orton took advantage and boom, RKO. But it was a buy one get one free promotion and Orton handed one to Paul Heyman as well. You could feel a lot of emotion with Randy Orton. It felt like this was the most he was invested in something since the Daniel Bryan story. In the back, Rollins and Orton argued for a while about their tag team match main event. Randy Orton scored the victory here, but from out of nowhere, Rollins thought the future was here, and the statement would be very emphatic at the end of the night as Seth dropped his Authority brother with a curb stomp. Randy Orton was incensed with the situation, but the Authority wanted to make sure that he let that anger out on John Cena. Triple H played devil's advocate seeing as Orton was acting like a lunatic last week, and it might have been a him or me situation for Seth Rollins. Okay, while not an era-defining rivalry, John Cena is still a very major part of Randy Orton's career and vice versa. At the end of the day, these two were closely tied together and throughout the years had some memorable battles. SummerSlam 2007, Bragging Rights 2009, TLC 2013, and I'm sure that both men wouldn't feel the same without the other. Hell in a Cell 2014 was in some ways the grand finale between these two. They were finding their way in this new era and it was becoming increasingly likelier by the day that this feud was coming to an end. I don't think I've watched this since it happened, but I love this battle. And I'm not exactly a big fan of this feud. Randy Orton benefited a lot from this Hell in a Cell structure as he slowed down the pace and brought a lot of aggression and intensity which John Cena wasn't able to match. The crowd was invested in the match and of course when Cena built momentum, fans booed. Great power slam here. Randy Orton was 2 steps ahead here because John Cena wasn't able to properly integrate here. Cena's trying to build momentum and boom! RKO. It was such a shocker. And this is what matches need to them. That element of surprise where you believe it could end. He threw him through a table, tried using the steps, but Cena ended up using this to his advantage. Orton still had the mental game here over Cena and he attempted the punt. Punt, nope, STF. Back in the ring, Cena hits the AA for a near fall. He went for another, but Orton countered into another RKO. Randy Orton was on crack here. It was one of his best performances in a long time, and one that I personally think stands out from his last 2 years. Cena caught him again with the AA, but it only got him a 2. He set up a table, what almost got the RKO, but instead, Cena hit a super AA through the table for the win. Great match. I thought Orton was by far the better performer here. My issue with this match is singular. It's the fact that John Cena didn't offer much here beyond doing his moves. We didn't see Cena work a lot here because if he did, this match would be talked about a lot more. Other than that, Randy Orton was insane here. He was much tighter and on point than he usually is, which is already great, but I liked them a lot here. The Cena and Orton feud lacked more creativity. Their matches followed a certain formula for the most part, and it's hard to think that this feud had amazing matches. The next night on Raw, Randy Orton stormed to the ring, and this man was off his meds. He went deep into Seth Rollins. He was enraged and said that if the Authority didn't handle it, he will. Triple H knew that Randy Orton was becoming a bigger problem, but it would go from bad to worse after he RKO'd Seth Rollins. With that action, he was going against the Authority. He followed with another RKO the following week, which was an even bigger problem, seeing as Orton was supposed to be Rollins' teammate at Survivor Series. He demanded the match against Seth Rollins for tonight, and Orton threatened to fight for Team Cena if it came down to it. Triple H didn't want it to get to this point, but because he needed Randy Orton, not just for the Authority, but for their livelihood. The match was made, but Triple H wanted them to settle their issues tonight because these problems aren't going to Survivor Series with them. This match saw Seth Rollins steal the win, and Orton had to swallow his pride. The game was still uncomfortable here because he knew how Randy Orton operated, and it seemed like Orton humbled himself, but nope. RKO. Triple H still wanted him on their side, but Orton was far too gone at this point. He dropped the game, but then the numbers got to him. He almost overcame them. The fans were going crazy, but then against his will, he took a brutal curb stomp. To Triple H, it almost felt like taking the horse behind the shed. Stephanie was merciless. She demanded they do their job. Through all these years, Randy Orton was right under him, but for what's best for their positions, they finished the job and took out Orton with a curb stomp on the steel steps. A mockery out of Orton, the legend killer. Rollins was determined to make a legend out of himself, and the first icon he took out was Randy Orton. This was a great segment all around. One thing I really liked is how Triple H didn't just turn on Orton. It was a matter of him doing what he needed to do for himself and his position. For Triple H, it wasn't personal. It was business, but he knew how Orton would take it, seeing as he was sidelined for months because of this. So it was personal. Also, Seth Rollins was the guy who Triple H had been looking for the entire time in his Authority run. Someone who didn't lack the killer instinct and could switch his morals in an instant, all because the game told him. And that's something small I noticed about Randy Orton's heel run. For as vicious as he was at times, it always came when he was desperate and needed to impress Triple H. It wasn't a matter of him just doing it. The only times we seen a demonic Randy Orton was when he provoked Brie Bella, when he assaulted John Cena's father, and the time he went after Roman Reigns for ruining his title shot. So there it is. That's Randy Orton's heel run, the face of the WWE run. Honestly, this was good. It was much fresher and much more different to what he was in 2012. He was a cliche in some ways, you know, like Randy Orton, he wasn't offering much in 2012, especially after he came back from suspension. So this was a nice change. It was a bit different to his 09 push, obviously, where he was a demon, he's crazy and all that. Those moments are few and far between here, but his in-ring performances, his character work, were good. Is it his best heel run? No, obviously, but it's still a good run in his career as he got to main event WrestleMania, unified both the titles, had some good stories and matches with the likes of Daniel Bryan. So it's a time in Orton's career that I'm sure he probably looks at positively. So yeah.
Randy Orton returned at Fastlane and dropped everybody in sight except for Seth Rollins. The Architect ran away with a look of fear in his face, and this feud was going to continue. He came out the next night on Raw to discuss his disappearance. He was fuming and said that this was only the beginning, and said that it was a state of execution for Seth Rollins. And this is when the Authority without the Architect came out. Stephanie was still trying to get him back in the Authority, but Orton had one intention: to take out Seth Rollins. It was a situation where they were forced to take him out, and Stephanie was so desperate to move past this and look forward. To him, he'd rather kick ass than kiss ass. The Big Show tried to convince him to rejoin the group, the Authority, but it was like selling out. Stephanie thought it was ironic Orton was taking the high ground because he was committing even bigger crimes in the past, even to her on multiple occasions. Regardless, though, they wanted him to come back home. By the looks of it, it was a no. As they're walking up the ramp, Orton had a change of thoughts. He called for a meeting in the back, and when it came time for it, Seth Rollins looked terrified but was still able to talk about his worries of Orton rejoining the Authority. Stephanie was insistent on this, but the rest weren't. Her intentions came true though, and the Authority was back on the same page. Rollins and Orton teamed up in the main event, but there were some problems. The Viper was more experienced, and his instinct knew what was about to go down, so he wanted to tag in. But Rollins ended up refusing to do so and cost them the match. Right afterwards, the Architect was laying in the same exact position many have in the past. J&J got involved, paid the price, but Orton wasn't going to do anything. It was clear, though, that at any time he was going to strike, and Rollins was quite weary of that. He was well aware of the fact that Randy Orton was a snake. He was going to end up RKOing him eventually. In the meantime, he was by Seth Rollins' side. Orton was officially welcomed back into the Authority, and all of these guys were talking good, sucking up to him. Jamie Noble had his reservations about him, though. The future of the WWE was very comfortable about things, and he didn't even consider the possibility of Orton turning on him at this moment. He thought about it last week, but things had calmed down since then. His return to the group was met with strong criticism, not from the guys, but the contrary. Orton was trashing all of them. He called Kane a dumbass, Big Show a whiner, Jamie Noble's irrelevant and short. He didn't even talk to Joey Mercury, and Seth Rollins, he planned to make him his bitch. But this was all jokes. Fast forward to the end of the night, Randy Orton finally made his intentions known. He thought it was shameful that Rollins didn't think he would do something about it. He followed with a PGP down on the Architect, a 5-minute assault with Orton launching him into the announce table, DDTing him on the barricade, and to top it all off, an RKO through the announce table. The Authority expressed deep regret for letting him in, and Orton ended up challenging the Architect Seth Rollins to a match at WrestleMania. This was accepted. However, Rollins wanted a match on Raw. Yes, there was a bad intention there, and Orton was well aware of that. If all 5 of the Authority members come out, he has enough venom in him, and if he gets taken out, then he'll be even more motivated to retaliate at WrestleMania. That thought came out true. The Authority were here. One chair wasn't going to absolve him of this attack, but he was going to go out swinging. Sting, though, was more than gracious to help, and this image is crazy. It's almost surreal, the fact that Randy Orton and Sting stood in the same ring side by side. It's weird. It's very odd. Now it doesn't seem odd, but when you look at it from that time period, you didn't think Sting would come to WWE, let alone stand next to Randy Orton in the same ring. They cleared house, and the momentum was still on Orton's side. He was almost unstoppable ahead of WrestleMania, and Seth Rollins refused to come near. He lost a handicap match to the Viper on the final Raw before WrestleMania, and that was the build. That's the build. Randy Orton had an almost uncontrollable rage that couldn't be contained. Rollins' status as the face or the future of WWE was coming to question, and it was very one-sided, which I think is right because they took him out in the beginning. WWE was clearly thinking ahead here, and Rollins had some other plans, so you have to heat up Randy Orton. Now, every time I see this WrestleMania, I'm gushing over it. The vibe, Santa Clara, California, the sun's out, man, it was perfect. As for Orton and Rollins, good. The Viper changed it up wearing red trunks and elbow pads, and he was basically a modern version of his 2004 self, look-wise. One thing to notice is that this man was even more energetic and exciting than previously. He found a great combination on this night of his experienced self and his young self. Seth Rollins, on the other hand, you know 2015 Rollins. But the match clicked because it wasn't trying to be anything special. The only thing that was different was, as I said, Orton was more eccentric. He was more exciting. There was something in the air that day about him. And best of all was the mid-air RKO. I swear, Orton was wilding on this night. He felt so reinvigorated. And I don't know what it was, but it was so fresh. It was just his attitude. So what made this match different compared to others was his energy. It was good. You felt that he was more in tune and eager to put on a show. Seth Rollins, though, had the last laugh as he cashed in Money in the Bank to become champion by the end of the night. He rained on Rollins' parade, saying regardless of being champion, he beat him at WrestleMania. Basically, he wanted to do it again for the title. Kane had enough of this and demanded respect, and in an effort to test Randy Orton, he made a match between himself and the Viper. DQ finish. Orton was hurting, but he was prepared for the #1 contender's main event. This match was chaotic. Everyone was involved, but Orton stood victorious for all of 5 seconds because Rollins hit the curb stomp. Both men had a confrontation the following week over the stipulation, and Rollins had his choice. The RKO was banned. And this man was more comfortable than a baby at night. But now, it was Orton's choice. He wanted to take away Rollins' best weapon, the Authority. So he chose a steel cage match. He flipped over Rollins, threw J&J security around, and sent them running. The RKO was going away for Extreme Rules, so Orton decided to pull something straight out of the Attitude Era. A night full of chaos. He gave everyone a preview of Extreme Rules. Rollins came out and said he's the best at this game, and he had praises for Randy Orton, but assured him he won't be the champion. He told him to get it all of his system, and he was like, say no more, I'm gonna RKO everybody I see. Best of all, he promised to RKO Seth Rollins before Raw ended, and that's exactly what happened. He RKO'd the New Day, Heath Slater in the back, The Miz, and Seth Rollins was so distracted by the drama with Kane that he completely forgot about the Viper. He made good on his promise. Triple H was mad, Kane was elated, and Randy Orton was in a nice position ahead of Extreme Rules. Okay. Their match at Extreme Rules didn't really hit that hard. It's unfortunate, but the steel cage kind of hurt these two. It was supposed to prevent the others from entering, but that's exactly what happened. But as I said, Rollins and Orton were just better suited in another situation. It would have been better if they were actually facing off in literally an Extreme Rules match. I think that would have made more sense. Match-wise. Story-wise, Orton, of course, wanted to prevent the Authority from interfering, so that made sense. Rollins RKO'd Orton to steal the victory, and it would have been better if it was another match. Orton wanted a rematch, but the problem was Rollins turned him down. Roman Reigns wanted a title match too. Kane saw things differently and was willing to give them a chance. The fans were going to choose them, and when it came down to it, they chose a triple threat match. The Viper was more than confident about his chances. Roman Reigns, though, was quick to shut him up and made mention of their history in the past. Problem was, Randy had 12 world championships, so he's used to the situation. He actually won matches involving the world title. They had an even bigger problem, though, because Dean Ambrose got himself a title shot as well, so it was a fatal 4-way match. Very exciting match at Payback. Fatal 4-ways always hit, but this one was a hidden gem. It really was. It's pretty damn fun. You should go watch it. I watched it for this video. Of course, it was nice. It was a W match. Rollins retained the title to move on and continue his feud with Dean Ambrose, whereas Orton went elsewhere. Following Payback, Randy Orton slowly developed a feud with Sheamus. These two were having intense brawls. Sheamus tried taking out Orton after his match with Kane, or during his match with Kane, which was a no DQ match, and he disappeared. And upon his return, Orton dropped the Celtic Warrior with an RKO. He wanted to rip the mohawk off his fat head and shove it up his ass. That's exactly what he said in a promo, and this led to a match at Battleground. They had a decent match at Battleground with Orton winning because Sheamus had the Money in the Bank curse. Their feud was mostly consisting of 6-man tag team matches. Orton was usually on top, but Sheamus hit him where it hurts most. Okay, this is how it goes. The Viper had gotten himself a title shot against Seth Rollins for the main event of the August 10th, 2015 episode of Raw. Orton had his hands on the title during the match, but Sheamus cost him the match. He tries cashing in, but the Viper rebounded with an RKO, so they were equal. Their match at SummerSlam was once again decent, but this time around, Sheamus beat Orton clean, which was crazy. Crazy because this man was losing every match, and here he is being Randy Orton. And it's not like Sheamus wasn't an established star or anything like that. It's just Sheamus was very cowardly as Mr. Money in the Bank. This feud wasn't really detailed. Both men only interacted in matches. Very rarely would they speak, otherwise I would have mentioned it for this video. Orton won the rubber match on the September 7th, 2015 episode of Raw to move on, but right after the match, the lights went out and the Wyatt family respawned. Wyatt went for strikes, Strowman choked him out, slammed him on the mat, and Randy Orton was yet another victim of the Wyatt family. JBL explained things. So at the time, Ambrose and Reigns wanted a partner for Night of Champions, and Orton was a potential candidate. Upon Orton's return, he saved Ambrose and Reigns from an attack and cleared house. The feud was supposed to transition towards Randy Orton and the Wyatts. Roman was busy with Bray, whereas Dean and Orton were dealing with the other three. Both men had trust issues, Dean more so, and Orton literally said he can't even trust himself. But right afterwards, Orton suffered a shoulder injury in a tag team match against the New Day. This was a big injury. It wasn't supposed to be as big as it once looked, but it was. On this injury, the Legend Killer said, and I quote, "I had a match October 12th in Chicago. My shoulder got stretched back and I had a repair 12 years ago that was destroyed. I had a little pain, got an MRI, and was told they had to fix my shoulder again," Orton explains. "I had a new guy do it and had a stabilization done that they do to rugby players get, and there's some tough customers. This came at a terrible time because WWE was preparing for WrestleMania 32. John Cena got injured, Seth Rollins, Sting, that's why Shane McMahon returned. It was tough, and I'm sure the Viper would have been in a marquee match. There was a rumor at the time he injured himself taking the trash out. The Wrestling Observer reported this, but I didn't see much in it. Just wanted to mention it. Randy Orton missed Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, and most importantly, WrestleMania 32. A lot had changed since Randy Orton got injured. AJ Styles debuted, Enzo and Cass were on the main roster, Chris Jericho had an entirely new character, and things were already stacked in the summer of 2016, yet you add Randy Orton. Upon his return, WWE had already announced a match between the Beast Brock Lesnar and himself for SummerSlam. As strange as it sounds, this was a very fresh match. Orton's first appearance came at Battleground. What was more shocking than this match happening was Orton wearing pants here. Orton was so gracious and humble about being back, and most importantly, he was motivated. He was so excited that he didn't mind sharing the ring with Chris Jericho. Y2J was a bit worried about taking an RKO and threatened to hit a codebreaker out of nowhere. He relayed Orton on what happened in the past year, and best of all, he wanted to give him the gift of Jericho. Oh, he got scared. Orton said he looks like Ellen and was warned about Brock Lesnar. And basically, Chris Jericho was like, Suplex City was on the horizon. But this is where Jericho got curious. Why is it that both men have been in the company so long, yet they never faced off? And claimed Orton was scared of Brock Lesnar. For him, it was about having an epic return. Facing Brock Lesnar is necessary. He can't face a random like Fandango. And this shut up Jericho. So he told him what's going to happen at SummerSlam. Brock is going to take him to Suplex City. Was this a problem? No, because he was prepared to take 20 suplexes. But all he needed to do is hit one RKO. No enhancement needed. Now it looked kind of stupid hearing that, but it was clearly a reference to Lesnar. You see, Brock Lesnar failed a drug test ahead of UFC 200. Chris Jericho, as a spokesperson of Lesnar, called Orton a stupid idiot. He claimed these were his words, so he was going to be exempt for taking a beating. And he started pressing Orton to hit an RKO. Nope. There it is. RKO out of nowhere. Very entertaining segment. Chris Jericho was in amazing form at this point and could do no wrong. Randy was welcomed back with open arms by the fans, and he returned to the squared circle as a member of the SmackDown roster. The draft and brand split were in full swing. He joined a core group of veterans such as Kane, John Cena, and The Miz. Speaking of The Miz, Orton's first match back was against him later that week. Miz was absolutely dominant, but all Orton had to do was hit the RKO like that. I thought he was going to Booker T Miz and was going to wait a minute to pin him, but he ended up hitting another RKO to win the match. By the looks of it, the man was in form. But what did Paul Heyman think? You guys know how he starts the promo, promoting the hell out of Brock Lesnar. He shockingly said that Lesnar is going to entertain the fans, not in the traditional way that WWE does. It's politically incorrect, it's violent. He said that Lesnar doesn't need to step up to the new era, it's the contrary, the opposite. The new era needs to step up to Brock Lesnar. There's no attempts at courting favor from Lesnar, none of that. And talks about Orton shocking the world are ridiculous. He hears voices, well, how many tell you Lesnar's going to take you to Suplex City? If you're not, well, his mind is filled with nonsense. If it's the opposite, then Orton should listen to Heyman and said what's going to happen at SummerSlam. He shouted that Orton will never hit an RKO on Lesnar, and lo and behold, an RKO out of nowhere. I can't overstate how awesome this moment was. It was random, it was sudden, it was something straight from the 2000s. The fact that they actually pulled a surprise, oh man, this is what it's all about. Like, if they do this every once in a while, it's nice, and they were doing it in the beginning of the brand split. It was like, hey, we want to show you guys we actually changed. But they didn't, of course. And Lesnar was almost ecstatic. Everything about this program was exciting. It just was. It was hype. In an effort to prevent a situation like Raw, security were in place for Orton's match with Fandango the next night on SmackDown. He was doing business as usual when Lesnar ran in and dropped him with an F5. Both men shared the accolade of being two of the youngest world champions, and Randy said that he lost respect for Brock when he left. He felt that he wasn't the same guy that he thought he was after leaving. He's like, oh, Lesnar turned out to be the guy that I didn't think he was. Brock, on the other hand, saw the Viper as someone who was beneath him. He's a mega superstar. Orton, he's a star. Their RKO was a sign. He wanted Brock to know that he's the man. Problem was, the Beast didn't see him that way. He's just a man. And Heyman described him as a surfer that meets a shark. Orton was eager to kill the legend of Brock Lesnar, and when asked how he was gonna stay in form ahead of SummerSlam, Orton assured everyone that it takes one RKO to get to Viperville. Alberto Del Rio thought it was a joke like Disneyland, so Orton wanted to give him a VIP ride. Del Rio pushed Orton very far, isolated that arm, and even got himself disqualified. But the RKO got him out of a tough situation. On the final Raw before SummerSlam, Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman gave their final thoughts on SummerSlam. Before Heyman could speak, Heath Slater of all people interrupted. Now this guy was so damn desperate, he was trying to find any way to get a contract, even if he had to piss off Brock Lesnar. Slater asked for a chance to face Brock Lesnar, and it was all jokes from their side. Heyman moved on like Slater was a jobber, and he roared over being disrespected. He's like, hey, what is up? He knew he would get his ass kicked, but he had a family. Lesnar knew where he was coming from and said that he's got kids too before bringing him into the ring, all to tell him that he doesn't give a shit about his kids. Lesnar gave him two options, and even though Slater made his decision, he accomplished nothing. Now that was over with, Heyman spoke again. Now, he had to sell the fans on the match and how good Orton is. Problem is, Brock doesn't believe anything he says. Nobody could stand up to him, not even a 12-time champion. Very simple build for the match. They were keeping them separate a lot. I think it would have been cool to see a brawl, but it is what it is. This match was something of epic proportions. Randy Orton, one of the very top guys in WWE, a man that reigned atop the company in Lesnar's absence, and Brock Lesnar on the other side, a behemoth, a man that topples any challenge that comes his way, and I personally don't remember my prediction for this match, but I had high hopes. That's what it comes down to. It felt like a match that was too big to fail. You know those type of matches. Now let's talk about it. Lesnar easily took control. He threw Orton around repeatedly with the German suplexes, and I lost count. This man was tossing him around like he was nothing. Orton didn't put up much of a fight. He was being bullied around, but all it took was one RKO on the announce table. Brock was so out of depth at this point, he took a second rope DDT and RKO, but he still kicked out. Brock quickly rebounded with an F5 and delivered some rough shots to the face that busted Randy Orton. This led to the referee stopping the match and awarding the victory to the Beast, and even then, he continued the assault, leading to Shane McMahon coming out. Lesnar ended up dropping him as well, and it was a strange match. I didn't like it. It was paced horribly, and yes, Orton did have his moments, but it didn't live up to the hype. Not to mention, he suffered a concussion, and he suffered a concussion the hard way. Lesnar literally ripped him open, forced him to bleed, and they did it the hard way. It's crazy how they actually booked this match and allowed for Orton to get hurt like that. It's very strange. I believe Shane McMahon was supposed to face Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 33. They were starting to build the program up here, but man, Randy Orton really got shafted here. I think that's a reason why he got that super push later on. It's to owe up to this problem over here. I just didn't like the way the match went. And he doesn't need help, you know, it's Randy Orton. At the end of the day, Randy Orton's a 12-time champion. He does not need help. But in a situation like this with a guy who's a little bigger or stronger booked than him, I think it should have been a little closer than it was, because Lesnar basically decimated and destroyed him. I just didn't think it was a good match. Now, there's a counter to this. This is one thing to mention. It's understandable why they did it. You see, Brock Lesnar just came off of a UFC 200 victory. They're bringing him back to the WWE. Obviously, he's going to destroy one of the biggest wrestlers. It makes sense. Which leads me to another point. Why have the match? Randy Orton returned. He needed momentum, obviously, because at the end of the day, he's returning star. He's gonna bring a lot of value to the SmackDown brand. Why book the match? Answer to that is I'm assuming they needed a big marquee main event. You can't just have Finn Balor and Seth Rollins main event, which you could, obviously, but they probably didn't see it that way. So I was happy they booked this match, but timing was bad. If this happened a year later, I'm pretty sure it would have been better because they didn't have to protect Brock Lesnar as hard as they would have. They were going to protect him. He was going to win this match, whether it's SummerSlam 2015, 16, 17, 18, or even 19. He was going to always win this match, no doubt about it, but I'm sure it would have went better in other years because in 2016, there was a UFC element, so he was always going to win.
There was a couple of deep stories within the WWE at the time that saw a strong focus on developing something beyond the championship, but very few wrestlers were consistently involved in deep stories like Bray Wyatt was. The leader of the Wyatt family had placed an unmatched attention to his stories, and it goes beyond, I'm mad at you, I want to beat you. Wyatt had the deepest character in the entire WWE and prided himself on having that aspect of wrestling be dominated by him. There was so much lore and depth to the Bray Wyatt character, and to understand what I'm talking about, he used to say some nonsense that would end up being used as a way to develop his Fiend character. That's how deep it was. He looked very out of place with that era of WWE because his whole character had very strange and different motivations. While he did become one of the top talents in WWE, he was used as a guy to put over others. I think Wyatt could have been used better, but at the end of the day, someone was going to play that role and they decided on him. 2016 proved to be an important year in the history of the Wyatt family. Randy Orton, on the other hand, it was just another time where we got to show how crazy he could be. You guys know Randy Orton. He should be on a list. Blah, blah, blah. 2009 Randy Orton. We get it. But what about 2017 Randy Orton? Alright, let's get into it. Okay. On the August 23rd, 2016 episode of SmackDown Live, Randy Orton came out to talk about his match with Brock Lesnar. He had lost the match via TKO and saw Orton bleed like crazy. Now at the time, Orton had just returned from injury and was a much needed name for SmackDown. He's a part of the older guys along with the likes of John Cena, Kane, and The Miz. It sounds funny saying The Miz, but he was kind of a veteran at this point. Bray Wyatt interrupted the promo, and this was a very common thing at the time. Anytime they wanted to transition a feud, they'd have Bray Wyatt come in. Wyatt always wanted to make his mark with the main event talent. He said he watched SummerSlam and the look on Orton's eyes. This was a way for Wyatt to show that Orton was just a man, a mere mortal. Unlike him, he called himself a god and said that he could never die. This wasn't the first time that Orton and Wyatt interacted. Before Orton went out with an injury, he was starting something with the Wyatt family. Bray felt that he was fearing that Orton shouldn't be seen as something mythical, just a man. This is similar to how everyone Wyatt feuded with beforehand. No wonder he lost. They used his own tactics against him. They're not scared of him. He told Orton to listen to the voices in his head and run. The Viper, though, was welcoming on the challenge, and that's what he wanted. But he told Orton that he's not the Predator anymore. It's him. Wyatt said he's gonna cut the serpent's head off and hang it up like a trophy. Orton reminded him of the damage. That scars aren't what he should be worried about, rather the demons inside. He accepted the challenge for Backlash but told them that there's no fear at all. He's not scared of a man that calls himself a god, and went after him. The lights went out though. Randy Orton, in response to this, promised to blindside him. Now heading into the pay-per-view, Orton was set to face off with Bray Wyatt, but they decided to wait it out since he wasn't fully cleared yet. Orton was bleeding like crazy at SummerSlam. Brock opened him up the hard way with his hands, which isn't exactly a hard thing for Brock Lesnar to do, and WWE's protocol at the time was to allow talent to heal up properly if there's any sort of head injury. So Wyatt faced Kane instead. The Apex Predator returned during the match and RKO'd the Eater of Worlds to cost him the match. Wyatt thought it was unfair but also said that attacking Orton was a way out for him. But he chose to embarrass him. Wyatt said that Orton shouldn't sleep and brought out Eric Rowan to attack. This didn't mean much though because Orton RKO'd him and rendered the attack useless, just like Bray Wyatt's pushes at the time. Orton's encounter with Rowan ended the same way the following week on SmackDown. Bray thought they were well connected until the end. Basically like, Destiny's gonna have him connected. And ironically, they were. He once again said that he can't die, because he's not a man. Bray's mind games weren't foreign to Randy Orton. He said that this was him trying his best to do all of this because he is afraid. And the he's referring to is of course Bray Wyatt. It was a matter of control for Bray Wyatt. He constantly provoked him in hiding, but this plan backfired. Randy Orton was starting to do the whole vague mind game thing that Wyatt is known for, so he went after him and ended up getting trapped inside a room. This forced Bray to teleport or something, showing that he's much more unique than Orton claims he is. Now this feud wasn't huge or anything like that, not to mention that it was the beginning of the storyline between them. But it main evented No Mercy. It didn't have much heat in it because the fans already witnessed two great matches with the likes of AJ Styles and Dolph Ziggler putting on classics in their matches, but this felt like a SmackDown match. Luke Harper made a surprise return and helped Wyatt score the victory. And at face value, it looked like this was going to develop to become a heated feud, but it took an entirely different turn. Orton fell short once again later that week on SmackDown, and it was becoming much tougher to figure out Bray Wyatt. It was always one step ahead. Kane helped a little, but it wasn't enough. Then from out of nowhere, Randy decided to RKO Kane to the shock of Wyatt and Harper. It was a matter matter of, if I can't beat them, then join them. It seemed like Orton saw Wyatt as someone who was supernatural and tested his level of fear, as Bray had claimed many things and had his number like nobody else. Orton never lost as consistently or found himself on the losing side as much as he did during this time period than with Bray Wyatt. And with that, he had officially joined the Wyatt family. Now, I remember this very well. I used to watch every Raw and SmackDown episode. Randy Orton joining them was interesting because it posed as an opportunity to do something unique. It sounds like I'm talking vague, but let's make it simple. Other than Braun Strowman, there was no one that actually joined the Wyatt family in the past. There was Rowan, there was Harper, and there's of course Strowman. Orton was very different in his characteristics, the clothes he wears, his mentality, everything about that it makes it a unique situation. I was interested in it because SmackDown at the time had my full trust. I was shilling for that era of SmackDown like crazy, and it's not even nostalgia talking. I used to watch every show. I watched all the segments, unlike Raw, I used to skip over it. So I trusted it. I'm like, okay, let's see where this goes. Orton knew that earning the trust of the Wyatts wasn't as simple as doing good by them. It required more. The SmackDown vs. Raw Survivor Series elimination match was incredible. It was the WWE at their best with plenty of stories coming to a head. Too many egos on both teams with guys refusing to put their issues aside. For Randy Orton, it was the entire opposite as he did good for Bray Wyatt and of course SmackDown. And this was enough to earn the trust of the Eater of Worlds. In storyline, it's strange to see Orton accept taking a backseat role when all he knew was prominence since he became world champion. That's literally the entire reason why he didn't rejoin Evolution after Triple H told him to fall in line. But his plan went deeper than anything Wyatt expected. Both men faced American Alpha for an opportunity at the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. While American Alpha fought hard, the mind games of the Wyatts were overwhelming, and it meant that the tag team of Slater and Rhino were facing the Wyatt family the following week. And these two were unstoppable, and it showed as they destroyed the champions and ended their title reign after 3 months. It wasn't even a tough battle for them, and their title rematch even less so. While Orton and Wyatt were champions, Harper embarked on a singles run. His run wasn't as successful, but the trio were very loyal to each other. It's also important to note that the Wyatts defended the belts under the Freebird rule. This is a rule that allows for any member of the group to defend the belts, and it worked well for New Day only a couple of weeks earlier. There was an overlooked match involving them on the final SmackDown 2016, and if you're like, who? I'm talking about the Wyatt family, of course. I really remember enjoying this one because it also had the drama of the Usos and American Alpha. Orton and Harper had the edge during this match. They were the aggressors and worked like there was no chance of American Alpha winning the belts. It was the most intense challenge that Gable and Jordan had faced, but this ended up being the match that started the cracks in this new Wyatt family. Orton accidentally knocked down Harper, leading to American Alpha taking advantage to win the titles. Now initially, the group didn't let this affect them because they thought it was a foregone conclusion in the rematch. Wyatt was convinced that the titles were coming back to them. The rematch was better because the attention was fully on these two teams as opposed to the elimination match. Orton and Bray were determined to make good on their mistakes from 2 weeks earlier. Randy Orton once again had his issues with Luke Harper, leading to the loss. It got so heated that Harper accidentally dropped Bray with a super kick. These issues were too big to ignore, and Randy Orton was involved in 3 consecutive losses, all because of the Wyatt family. It got to the point where Bray struck Harper, which in some ways showed where his loyalties lie, because when it came down to it, he wasn't willing to do the same to Randy Orton. So this led to a match between the two before the Royal Rumble. Orton won, and Bray immediately kicked Harper out of the family. This is a terrible decision in the long run for him because it ended up coming back to bite Bray Wyatt in a huge way and ended up affecting the entire trajectory of his career in WWE, in storyline of course. As for the Rumble, the Wyatts entered later in the match with Orton being a much needed asset for Bray Wyatt. While Bray did prioritize Orton over Harper, there was still a chance of him wanting back into the family, but it didn't take long for him to make his decision. Even then, Harper was thrown out while Bray and Orton made it to the final 3. Roman was too strong though and managed to eliminate Bray. The fans were more than convinced that it was Reigns because he was the guy that WWE was pushing hard, but surprisingly, it was Randy Orton. Now this was a nice tactic that WWE did. If they want you to cheer for anyone, whether it's Akira Tozawa, the Brian Kendrick, John Cena, Rusev, they put Roman Reigns in there near the end. This shouldn't have been shocking, but when you look at the names people talked about in the lead up, Randy Orton was a bit unexpected. I think the betting odds were with him the day of the show, but if you asked me at the time, I would have said The Undertaker. It made too much sense to have him face John Cena for that title, or even before the show, AJ Styles defending the title against him. But if you give it to a current talent who has a big story, it makes sense for Orton to win. Other than him, The Miz and Chris Jericho probably, and I personally wouldn't look forward much to a Miz and Cena title match looking back on it, but he was very good in his role as a villain. I would have looked forward to it in 2017, but if today me went back to that time, no. And of course, another potential winner we gotta mention is Bray Wyatt. I'll talk about that later though. The Royal Rumble winner interrupted Cena's title promo and Bray said that it feels like everything stays the same, and in order for it to change, he has to win the chamber. There was a big tease of another Cena and Orton match for WrestleMania. He was determined to end the cycle. Luke Harper was still on them and it led to a tag team match. Things weren't looking so good for John Cena as he fell victim to the Wyatt family. This title reign was one of the weakest booked in Cena's career. While there was a lot of pain and anguish from Harper over being overlooked and betrayed by Wyatt, he felt that the best way to eradicate these feelings was to go after Randy Orton. This was a nice side feud that showed Harper's single capabilities again. He was an underrated singles guy throughout his time in WWE, and this match was one of his most notable as he was seen as a huge threat in Orton's way. The Viper had to work super hard to get the win, and it was a very good match. Way better than what Orton and Wyatt were capable of. Later that night, Bray featured in the Elimination Chamber match for the WWE Championship. I gotta say, this match was wonderful. It's one of the best chamber matches from the last 10 years and something that Bray Wyatt will always be connected to. We gotta talk about this match if we talk about his career. He blindsided Cena's sister Abigail and everyone was convinced he was winning. I certainly was. Final clash, AJ Styles and Bray Wyatt. A thrilling battle with a conclusion that the fans were dying for. He managed to win the title, and looking back, this was a situation which was expected when he debuted, but certainly not around this time period. Because if you asked somebody in 2013, will Bray Wyatt win the WWE Championship? I think most of us would have said yes. It's just, if you asked the same question 3 years later, I'd begin to doubt it a bit. Wyatt went through plenty of feuds where he was on the losing end. For years, he's always been seen as the guy to make someone look good, and just when you least expect it, Wyatt wins the title. Great moment. I was proud of him at the time, not to mention that if he was going to keep being seen as someone who was considered a threat, then eventually he needed to win the title, just based on that logic alone. Randy Orton came out to tease what's to come. Later that week on SmackDown, Bray said he had the whole world in his hand. Now this image still looks weird because this version of Wyatt never really came close to the title, he just won it from out of nowhere. Bray was very excited and happy with his future, calling it the era of Wyatt. In the way the fans reacted, you'd think he was a face. John Cena though interrupted. He treated Wyatt like a huge threat and went back into serious business, saying no one deserves anything. They earn it. He said this because the fans were chanting that Bray deserved it. Cena called him a target and said they should get to business for the title. AJ Styles wasn't too happy about this because he was overlooked. Styles had yet to receive a one-on-one title shot and trashed Cena for thinking he could do whatever he wants. And unfortunately for Styles, he knew that Cena could, but the Phenomenal One tried his best to lay his claim for the title shot. So Daniel Bryan made it a triple threat main event. Now this was a great match. They made it seem like the deck was stacked against Bray with Harper attacking him right before the match. This allowed for Cena and Styles to battle. Now you guys know, anytime these two face off, it's magic and something special. I always show for their matches shamelessly because they were that good. This was a pay-per-view level triple threat match. These men all went insane, especially AJ Styles, but then again, the year is 2017, so I don't even need to say it. You guys know what's up with AJ Styles that year. Wyatt felt legitimized beating these two here as he went through Cena and Styles with a convincing victory. But Randy Orton was lurking. At this point, it wasn't known if Orton was going to challenge Wyatt or the Universal Champion. Randy Orton did make it seem like he wanted Bray, but then he straight up said that he refused to face him, and to understand Orton's loyalty to Wyatt, he kneeled down and gave himself to Wyatt. This also meant he surrendered his title shot, and this was enough to give him the keys to the kingdom. Bray Wyatt felt that he had a very trustworthy ally in Randy Orton, someone who showed unwavering support like nobody else, not to mention was the most powerful ally and partner that Bray Wyatt could have. Orton was willing to be behind him as a number 2. Since Orton surrendered his title shot, a battle royal was made. Harper and Styles made it to the very end, but it was a draw, so this whole thing had to be dragged another week. It really looked like Harper was going to be added to the title match. There was a lot of teases and moments where it looked like, oh, maybe he's going to be in the title match. Impressive showing from both men here, but it ended with Styles winning. It quickly went awry for both Styles and Wyatt though. In a moment's notice, AJ Styles was ready to confront the champion. Bray promised to bring the spear of the devil against Styles. Then Orton popped up on the screen. He was at the Wyatt compound, which again, Bray Wyatt gave him the keys to the kingdom. Although I wouldn't call that a kingdom, looks like a freaking trash house. Orton said that it wasn't his world, and immediately Bray's look of pride and happiness for Orton faded. Because this world was never his. Orton revealed his master plan to take advantage from within. Wyatt looked worried over what was about to happen as Orton was intending to burn the spear of Sister Abigail and in turn, kill the spear of Wyatt. Orton burned down the house all while Wyatt in tears was begging him not to. Great moment here. A moment that befits a WrestleMania feud. I like the long-term story involving Orton breaking down the family from within. It was much deeper than most of the stories that WWE had at the time, but it did feel weird in a way because Orton didn't feel so much of a face with the way he acted. The fans weren't even treating Wyatt like he was a heel at all. Orton was in many ways a villain because he was using deceitful tactics, and also the dynamics would have been better if it was swapped. And again, I'm just saying the dynamics would have been better if they were doing this exact same build, because if Bray tried to provoke Orton, beat him up and stuff, and then Orton destroys him as a face, then yeah, this build makes sense. But they did it in a way where Orton seemed more of a villain. Orton as the champion and Wyatt as the Royal Rumble winner makes sense, but it is what it is. Styles and Orton had a very good match for the title shot the following week. They saw the Viper reclaim his opportunity, and it was official. Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania. I didn't see this coming. Not the match, but the fact that it was a title match. Because if you asked me 2 months earlier, I would have said it was AJ Styles versus The Undertaker, John Cena versus The Undertaker. Hell, I'd say AJ Styles versus John Cena again. I don't know. Orton elaborated more on his issues with Wyatt the following week on SmackDown. He said he was waiting for his opportunity for months. Attacking him didn't make sense because it wasn't going to affect him, so he tried to figure out where to hit him where it hurts. Joining the Wyatt family was the move. The venom in his veins got deeper. It was ironic to Orton that Wyatt called himself the face of fear when he was the one showing fear. There was still one more thing to do though. Take the WWE Championship. Orton said that Bray has nothing now. The champion claimed that Orton didn't kill the spirit of Sister Abigail because she was forged in fire. The effect is that he knows no boundaries. Now he is limitless as she lives in him now. It's like, you didn't make me weaker, you made me stronger. Was it true? No, it certainly wasn't, as evident by the next couple of weeks of the build. Randy Orton didn't know how to answer all of this because Wyatt doused himself in the ashes of Sister Abigail. Bray started using different mind games to get into Orton's head. He told Orton that his one flaw will become his biggest strength. Before WrestleMania, Bray had to deal with his old brother, Luke Harper. It was a tough challenge, but the champion stood tall. Randy Orton made one last attempt to overcome Wyatt's mind games after his match, and I don't know how to explain this, but to put it simply from my perspective, Orton was trying to drive home the fact that he killed what was left of Sister Abigail. Even if Bray claims her spirit lives in him, it doesn't change the fact that Orton turned her spirit into char. So this is a story. Randy Orton's intelligence and cunningness has been on display for years. As strange as it was for him to take a backseat to Bray Wyatt, it came with ulterior motives. Wyatt's greatest strength was his reliance on his family. A strong family has brought him plenty of success in the past, and most importantly, an unshakable core. He channels his strength from the family, and that's where his strength has come from. Orton lost the battle but was aiming to win the war, a war that would challenge Wyatt's own spirit. How can he answer to a man that destroyed his family from within and killed what was left of Sister Abigail? An important source of inspiration for Bray Wyatt. No matter how hard he tries to convince the public, Wyatt was not the one with an advantage heading into WrestleMania. Randy Orton used these tactics many times in his career and always prioritized having a mental advantage because that's half of the battle. He broke his mind, spirit, and soul. Now this was a very long show. I watched it the day afterwards because that's how I usually used to do things back then. I remember WrestleMania 33 very well. I was pretty tired of watching it by the time this match happened, and I didn't have hopes for this despite the fact that I loved the story. So I skipped it. I made a great decision that day because I was watching the show since 11 a.m. and the last thing I wanted was to finish the show at 5 p.m. But this is my first time watching it and I have to talk about it here. I want to see how the story unfolded, but apparently not many people like that. I heard about bugs, I heard about nonsense, blah blah blah, but this is my first time actually watching the match. Orton was very intense early on, and is that the bugs and worms people were talking about? Randy Orton won, I'm sorry. Hope you enjoyed this video, peace, I'm out. Now Wyatt used a lot of tactics to get into Orton's head. He had an advantage when it came to that because while Orton did dominate in the build, he's a pure pro wrestler when the bell rings. So this is where Wyatt had a bit of an advantage. Orton doesn't use too many mind games when it comes to the matches. The champion slowed down the tempo, which is funny because it's usually Orton who does, and from out of nowhere, Orton RKO'd Bray on the outside. Back in the ring, Orton was trying his best to wrap it up but found himself in Sister Abigail position. That wasn't enough for the win though, and there's the Bucks. I despise this because I don't even hate the match yet. They're really trying hard for me to hate on this match. Orton hit an RKO from out of nowhere and that was it. What the hell? That match ended prematurely. I really thought Bray would kick out there. Very mid-match that doesn't make good on the feud, but to be honest, as a match from bell to bell, I was expecting something truly awful and disappointing. It was disappointing, but it wasn't the level of disappointing that I heard it was. Then you add the story and understand more. You know, without the story, it's like, this is not good. Then you add the story, it's like, what the hell? This is horrible. My problem with it is the weird ass bugs and worms. And of course, the issue with the match not following up on the feud. It needed to feel grander. You know, it's like, oh, this match is happening on freaking SmackDown. But this is what happens when you have a tight card. I don't think they would have tore the house down, but it needed more aggression. I wouldn't have known they had such an intense feud if I came into it at WrestleMania 33. And also, who administrated the Bucks to blind our eyes? Was it Bray Wyatt? Not a good choice. Orton came out later that week as the new WWE champion. The Viper's whole demeanor changed completely and he said that he had power over Wyatt and that he's his master. This was the post-WrestleMania crowd, so they kinda booed him. You guys know how they were, especially in this era. Bray said that Orton doesn't have power over him and that this is far from over. He was ready for his rematch, but before that could go down, Bray wanted to face Orton in a different match. A House of Horrors match. This was unknown, but Orton accepted. Bray tried to take advantage, and when it didn't work, Rowan made his return. Harper made the save, and despite his issues with Orton, worked side by side with them. This led to a tag team match. The faces scored the victory with Bray watching on enviously. This feud was starting to fall off as Bray Wyatt moved to Raw as a part of the Superstar shakeup. Bray was still on Orton though. He still wanted to beat him. He said that their paths are gonna cross. Rowan took advantage of this and laid him out on behalf of Wyatt. Now the problem with this feud is the fact that Orton was sidetracked with Jinder Mahal. He dealt with Rowan in an ODQ match, but the modern day Maharaja wanted him to know that he's got his eyes on the title. Orton said that while Bray called the match Orton's Purgatory, it will be Wyatt's Eternal Hell. A very one-sided build. Wyatt was talking on Raw with no real pushback or responses from Orton, and it was a far cry from what their feud was earlier. House of Horrors saw Wyatt try his best with the mind games. Orton walked into many different rooms with different kinds of horrors. This house did a number on Orton. He took a rough beating and it didn't bode well for his chances in the arena. Bray was convinced that he had the match, but Orton used one of his tactics against him. Jinder Mahal though interfered and cost Orton the match. There it is, Bray Wyatt won. And by the way, it was a non-title match because they changed it. It was initially supposed to be for the WWE Championship, but they didn't bother. I liked the concept and actually enjoyed Wyatt's feud with Matt Hardy, but this match felt rushed. I would also say that it was the first time, so there's that, but judging by the way things were at the time, it felt like it was rushed in as a way to get it over with, as evident by the Jinder Mahal feud. Like, they were salivating to give Jinder the belt at this point. But that's the feud. Bray Wyatt ended it on top, although it wasn't really that emphatic, because Orton had to transition into a feud with Jinder Mahal, but he won the feud. Personally, I like this long-term storytelling here. WWE really knew what they were doing with having Orton infiltrate the Wyatt family. It's just, if Orton was gonna end the whole story as a face, I think they should have tried to make Wyatt seem more evil than he was in the past, because it felt like Orton was the one who was more evil. That's the only problem I have with this feud. Obviously, Wyatt won the belt and became a transitional champion to give it back to Orton, but this could have been their chance to establish Bray as a much bigger talent than he was in the past. It is unfortunate for him because at the end of the day, this feud, it didn't fulfill its full potential, I'd say. Up to this whole burning down the Wyatt family compound thing, it was excellent, but like, there's some things out there that kind of drag it a bit down, but it was still a good feud, so there's that. Alright, what you guys think of the Randy Orton and Bray Wyatt feud? Please comment down below, and that's for this video. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on the like button or perhaps the RKO on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.